Should they wait to speak today?
Yeah.
Dominic, how you doing?
Good, how are you?
Good.
Good, thank you for getting this to work, thank you.
Oh, no, don't thank me. Thank Lillian, the town clerk.
Lillian, you did a great job.
Oh, thank you.
Last night was a little confusing, but tonight is perfect.
Where there's a will, there's a way, right?
Absolutely, good job, seriously. Wonders of technology.
Mr. Lombardi, how are you this evening? Miss Mayo, how are you?
Very good. How you doing, Councilman?
Good, good, thank you. Hello, Mr. S., how are you?
You're muted.
That's okay. I read lips.
I'm good, thank you.
Hi, Cindy.
Yes, Lindy.
Okay,
Don't ask.
No.
everybody is in.
Everybody's in now?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Special meeting of North Smithfield Town Council, June 30th, 2020 is called to order at 6:47 PM. First item is a prayer and a pledge, Madam Clerk.
Lord, assist with thy Holy Spirit of counsel all of those who are serving in positions of authority and responsibility. I pledge
Pledge
allegiance
allegiance to the flag
of
of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands,
one
one
nation,
nation,
under God,
under God, indivisible,
With
liberty
liberty
and justice for all. Roll call, please.
Mrs. Barnamoli,
Here.
Mrs. O'Hara,
Here,
Mr. Ogier,
Here.
Mr. Zelinski,
Present.
Mr. Vadney.
Here. Before we get to our first agenda item, I believe I have to make a motion to add the Keystone license to the, we need to discuss something. We can't vote on it, but we need to discuss something. So if we can, I'll make a motion that we add the Keystone license that we approved last week at our meeting. Add to the agenda. Is there a second?
Second.
Second by Mrs. Bottomoli and Mr. Zelinski. Roll call vote.
Mrs. Barnamoli? I didn't hear that, I'm sorry. I think she's frozen. Okay. Mrs. O'Hara?
yes,
Mr. Ogier?
Yes.
Mr. Zelinski?
Yes.
Mr. Vadney.
Yes. I had to put this on in talking with the clerk. We had submitted, or we had made the motion to approve the licensing pending a clean BCI check from the town of North Smithfield, sign off from the fire marshal and a couple of other things. And she did get back a BCI report from the town, and maybe you could explain it better.
So when I didn't realize this until now, when we received the BCI check from the North Smithfield Police Department, there's 3 different options. The first is a clean record, a no criminal record. The second is that there is a criminal record with no disqualifying information. And the third is that they have a criminal record with disqualifying information. With your last motion, you had approved it pending a clean BCI. And given those 3 options, I'm not sure which of those 3 options constitutes as a clean BCI. So without a vote, we just need to come to an agreement on what a clean BCI is, so that I can move forward.
David, would the middle one that says that they have a record, but there's no disqualifying evidence, would that be considered a clean check?
I think the fact that the police department puts it in that manner, I think that's the whole issue, right? The council, when they made that vote, did not know about the 3 options. They just thought it was either you had a record that disqualified you or you didn't.
Correct.
The clerk, I think, is under the impression that if it's a record that doesn't disqualify you, it's equivalent to the intent of the council.
I just wanted confirmation.
Obviously, we can discuss that, can't vote on it, but if, you
Right.
know, if the council, I know the council wasn't thinking about that precisely, but I assume, and I don't want to speak for the council, but I assume the council was thinking clean record in the context of no disqualifying record, a record that doesn't disqualify you. If that's not your intention, then the answer, you know, that if nobody was thinking that way, obviously you didn't have a specific intent, but the clerk needs to at least make the best, at least hear what the council's thinking, not a vote, but at least what the council's thinking, whether non-disqualifying information would allow her to issue the license. Like, if there was a council person that said, well, it's got to be perfect or not at all, then that has to be put down for another vote on another day. And we need to have a special meeting with 48 hours notice to do that.
Nancy, did you have a comment? Mr. Zelinski?
Yeah, thank you, Mr. President. You know, we've been doing this I've been doing this for a number of years, and I did not know that there was a stratified layer of background check. So it's very good that it was caught by our new town clerk. No aspersions on anyone, it's new. I'm just of the mindset, because fireworks attract families and children, children of all ages, that whatever in the future, now we can't go back, they have their license, let them continue doing business this season. But I think for the future, we look at the most reports we can. I'm trying to choose my words carefully here. I would like to know as much as possible on a criminal record because of children in the proximity to fireworks stands. That's for the future. Future council can make that decision, but I just think it's a safeguard to protect young people.
Just in reference to the comment that you just made, though, that they have their licenses, they do not, because we put
They're pending.
things in place and they haven't come in and picked up or paid for them, yet they are operating.
So I'm hearing a lot of doorbells. I'm hearing more people joining than what you said, Mr. President. I'm sorry.
I said that we put qualifiers on their license approval, that they needed a clean BCI, fire marshal to sign off, and a number of other things. And those things only came into play today, yet they are already operating without coming in and getting a license or paying the fee. Those two stores are open, running. They've been running all weekend.
Well, there are three now, are there not?
No.
There's one at Martin Pool, one at the Plaza, and one in Park Square.
There's one at Park Square Liquors and there's one at the Plaza. Where's the other one?
Is there not one down in maybe I thought
Mine too.
Lillian, if I may, Mr. President, defer to Lillian.
The one at the poolside is a totally different company. They have what they need.
Right, okay, so
Oh, we
they're
didn't
all
approve-
set.
We didn't approve that one, no?
You did in November.
November?
Oh, okay.
They do
Yeah.
it yearly.
Okay.
Yep.
Mr.
They're all
Mr. President, for the sake of time and all the other issues that need to be discussed tonight, if it's okay with the council, I had no idea that this issue was going to be on the agenda tonight. I'll be happy to take responsibility for it and discuss it with the police chief and make a decision in the morning.
Okay. I'm all right with that.
That's fine.
I didn't know it was going to be on either until I logged on to the Zoom meeting. And then the clerk made me aware of it.
Thank you.
Everyone's all set then? No other discussion?
No.
Okay, thank you. Next item then, discussion by council board of other action on adoption of 2020-2021 proposed budget. Did meet last night. We got through 9 3/4 pages of the budget. We left off on page 10 of the expenditure budget, 10 of 13, and we left off at rubbish disposal. We have rubbish disposal in the amount of $816,832. Is there a motion to approve the rubbish disposal in the amount of $816,832?
Mr. President, I'll make the motion, but I want discussion on it.
Yep. Motion by Mrs. Zelinski. Is there a second?
Second.
Second by Mr. Ogier. Discussion, Mr. Zelinski.
Thank you, Mr. President. Mr. President, when I look at solid waste disposal, 2019 and 2020, I would imagine this was estimated on tipping fees from Rhode Island Resource and Recovery, $150,000, 400. This year, it's proposed to be $171,000, a $20,600 increase on the tipping, and yet, to my understanding, Resource Recovery has not raised tipping now. Is this anticipating a huge influx of weight of tipping fee? Does anybody have that answer? It's $20,400, $24,600 increase.
I think it's reflective of what was paid in the previous year based on the numbers that we have. In 2019, that's what was spent, was $170,000.
Yeah, and you know, Mr. President, I'm looking at it. So if we look at 218, it was 131, and as of May 31st, we were at 144. So if that's the anticipation of tipping fee, I would like to make the motion to reduce that to 160,000. That'd be $11,600 difference. And then further on, when we discuss tipping fees and trash removal, when we come to High Rocks, where there are 128 residents, those people have mortgages, they're rate payers. And I think prior to the budget, when Mr. DeBrois was in, we said we will look at this at budget time. Well, what I'm proposing right away, I mean, I'm prepared to make a motion later on to go to 18,000 for the residents over there. They are residents, they own their properties. And right now I'm looking at by reducing the estimated tipping, which is proposed at 171,000 to 160,000. That'll be an $11,000 that we could apply toward the 18,000 that I hopefully will get a second and a motion on to provide people over at High Rocks. That's my discussion.
May I speak?
Yes,
We're already over that budget. We're at, as of 6/18, we were at 165,000. So if you're going to
Okay.
lower it, just keep that in mind that we'll probably go over budget next year.
Now, I'll tell you right now, then I will withdraw that. I'll keep it at one. I will make a motion to keep it at 171. But when we do get to High Rocks, I'm going to make a commentary that we provide those people with services that they have been paying for. So, okay, I'm going to take that off the table. We'll leave it at 17. This up to the minute would have been nice to have had last week. Finance director, so we could have looked at it, at least when you had the numbers, because it's not updated, and that's all that we have. So I appreciate it. Thank you.
What happens is that every time I update them, people don't have the latest one, and then everybody gets confused. So I only updated through 5/31. I updated it yesterday because I wanted to see where we were ending at.
Okay, because I did call and I asked who was printing these out. And in an email, I asked if there were any updates or changes, and I was told no. And I said, well, I'll stay with the old one just to save the printing. So
Right. And that's
I
a
would
true
like
statement.
in the future to have everything pretty much up to date before we go into budget hearings. I appreciate it. Thank you.
That's fine.
any other
No problem.
comments on rubbish disposal? If you're gonna make that, if you're gonna make a change on that High Rocks, you have to do it now, because this is what we're discussing right now, so.
Yes. So, Mr. President, I'd like that we add $18,000 so that High Rocks, if they use it all, they use it all. If they use more, that'll be up to their common area maintenance to figure out that difference. But right now, I would like to make a motion that we provide these ratepayers with service of $18,000. How it's accomplished, whether it's through a subcontract, a contract, I don't know. But whatever's the most efficient way to do this, I would make a motion that we add $18,000. That's a motion, Mr. President.
Well, it's an amendment to the motion.
Okay.
I'd like to second that with discussion. Can I do that?
You have to get, the second of the main motion has to amend theirs as well. So Mrs. Zelinski made the motion, Mr. Ogier seconded it. Does the second amend his motion?
I amend my motion. I have discussion as well, but I amend it.
That's how we have to do this. Mrs. O'Hara.
I can see as tax owners, they feel that the town owes them the service, but at the same time, there are over 30 cars that have been at least 2 years registered out of state. Where is their responsibility to make sure, and these aren't snowbirds in Florida, that they register their cars and pay as a, responsible people in this town, they're doing the right thing. Picking up their rubbish is one thing, but they seem to forget that they're not paying their just due with people, and there are at least 30 minimum that are out-of-state vehicles. So on one thing, we have a responsibility, but where's their responsibility?
Mr. Ogier?
I was just gonna ask, does 18,000 cover the year with at least a 6-month window? Is that what we're talking about, is 18,000? I know there was discussion to pilot it. I just wanted to know exactly what is the 18,000 for, and is it enough to cover the pilot? So it just sounds like, I support it, but it just sounds like we're just kind of throwing money without a real plan.
Mr. Zelinski?
Mr. O'Shea, if you remember, Mr. DeBryce, who also works for the city of Woonsocket, understands tipping fees and the contract that they had with Valley Disposal. I don't know if Mr. DeBryce is on the line or not, and if we can invite him in to say, what was it last year? Because I think that was one of the questions. And once we know what it is, I think that it was up around $15,000, $16,000, if I remember what he told us during our meetings. So, Mr. President, if I may ask if Mr. DeBryce is out there, I don't see
Yeah,
him.
Paul, I just want to make sure that it's covering the right time period, that we're not leaving them short, and we start this endeavor and then all of a sudden it runs dry. You know what I mean? So I'm fine with hearing what he has to say. I support, obviously they are paying taxes. They should be accommodated to services. I know it's going to be a challenge. If they have a way to do it, that's great. I just want to make sure that it's covering an appropriate time period.
Councilor Ozier, I went through the grid. I see Mr. DeBryce is in the house. He's muted, if he can hear me. And Mr. President, can Mr. DeBryce address this?
Right now, we're discussing this, Mr. Zelinski, right now. We're not in a public hearing.
Did we officially close the public hearing last night?
Yeah, we closed it last night.
Okay. Well, then I stand at that. I would like to keep it at $18,000.
But there are two issues to remember. Number one is there's an agreement that High Rock signed with the town that agreed to, in order to get their permit for approval, that they would be responsible for rubbish disposal. That agreement is out there. It's an existing agreement. It hasn't been rescinded. It hasn't been revoked. We haven't changed it. And they're still deficient on the number of affordable housing units they're responsible for to the town, which is a different issue than.
Okay, it is a different issue.
But the reality of it is there's an agreement that says they're responsible for their own rubbish disposal. And based on the conversations that we've had over the last 2 or 3 months on this thing, number one is what you're looking for, putting money into something, just putting money there to take care of their rubbish disposal isn't defining how we're going to do this, number one. Number two, it's not enough based on what the administrator has provided us, that our trash hauler said he would charge to pick the trash up over there. Because we can't enter in, we'd have to go out to bid if we want to pick up their trash and we don't want to amend our contract with Mega. We got to go out to bid, put it out to bid and see who's going to come in and bid it. We just can't say, we want the trash picked up, here's some money, go pick up the trash. It needs to go through the process.
Well,
So if we want to put
about that we don't want to be a one opportunity trash collector, and yet we are, because we extended the contract this year without going to bid because it was expedient, and we did that. So I don't know how else.
Oh, I object to that characterization, sir.
Okay, let me hear it.
We didn't go out because it was expedient. We went out because it was the best and most cost-effective opportunity for the town of North Smithfield to purchase trash removal services for the entire year next year, unquestionably. Period.
Well, how would we know that if we didn't go out to bid?
We did go out to bid. With a caveat to be able to evaluate bids for a different form of pickup. And in that circumstance, and the new bids, if we had accepted the new bids for the, just for the same service, our costs would have been higher than what we have in this negotiated agreement.
So a one-year contract to keep it
For a
maintained.
one-year
is that correct?
contract. This was not a matter of expedience. This was a matter of cost effectiveness and certainty to avoid controversy with a bid award.
Well, we have 128 residents with one-stop pickup. It's not like they're going through a subdivision or down a street, jumping off a trash collection truck into traffic, out of traffic, stopping traffic. To me, less repetitive motions on the part of the workers that are collecting the trash. I think it's a safer operation. But again, I'm not in the trash business. I did go on site a few months ago with yourself, Mr. Administrator, and the Director of Public Works, and I looked at it, and I didn't see a problem with it. But I'm still going to stick. I would like to see that we add $18,000 to these residents so that they can enjoy trash pickup like everyone else.
Mr. President, if I might.
Mr. Ozowski.
The status of our budget circumstance is one that I can't emphasize enough that, you know, $18,000, $20,000 doesn't sound like much. It's going to sound like a lot in a few minutes or a few hours when we get to the end of this line.
And I thought
You know,
the
caution, the other
$50,000
thing-
for engineering was a lot of
the-
money too, Mr.
The other,
Administrator.
Mr. President, may I speak?
Please do.
The other piece that I need to ask everyone to keep in mind, and do as you wish. I mean, this is, you know, it's your decision. But what you are effectively doing is changing the standards by which trash is collected in the town of North Smithfield. Currently, the only trash that is picked up by our trash collector for the public is curbside. There are no exceptions to that, except for our own schools with rear loaders that, front loaders that pick up dumpsters. Our schools. Changing the standard by which we pick up trash is opening Pandora's box, because there are plenty of other entities out there that pay taxes that get nothing else back for them but plowed roads, police, and fire protection.
So,
Be fair.
Mr. Zelinski.
so these other entities, are they resident homeowners? I'm not talking commercial, I'm not talking rental properties. I'm talking about people that have mortgages and pay their residential taxes. Still of the mindset that they should be provided with the service that anybody else, whether they live in a two-story home, single-story home, whatever, their homes, they're paying the residential taxes.
Mrs. Bonioli.
I can understand wanting to pick it up since we have other condominium projects in town that we're picking up, and it is a curbside pickup. But at the same time, as we're going into this budget session, I find it really difficult to add to the trash budget when we've got a school budget that could be in crisis. And I also know that if you look at other communities, because my daughter is shopping for a condominium, most association fees have the trash removal fee in that fee. Yes, if she chooses to buy a condo in a 3-family house that's been converted, she might get roadside pickup. But otherwise, if she's looking at a loft unit, which she's been looking at, it's in the association fee. And when you purchase it, that is in the association fee. I could see maybe down the road, but this year with this economy, I struggle with that money going into trash removal. Just an opinion. I would like to do it. I would, but not when we're cutting and possibly cutting into the school budget. I can't do it.
Mr. Ogier,
Could we put it into a contingency? See what kind of plan they come up with. I know we've been talking about it. Let Highwalks work with the administration to come up with a plan. You know, we can always vote on releasing the contingency funds. I don't know if there's a way that they can try to reimburse that fund. I'm not sure the specifics of that, but I'm just trying to.
Who are you looking to reimburse the fund? And
Well, I
what?
didn't know if I know what Terry was just saying, like, you know, it's in their fee. I didn't know if there was a way they could repay that account over time, at least initially. If not, then just putting it into a contingency, and you know, if we come up with a plan for it, the money's there. If not, I have a hard time with this one as well. They pay taxes. They're residents of this town. They deserve the same services that everyone else does. It's an unfortunate situation. It's especially with, you know, the history over there as well. I don't think they should necessarily be penalized for that. It's a tough budget. I get that. And we have a lot of tough decisions still ahead of us, but you know, I think if we can do it this year, it'll be great. I know we're going to be negotiating a new contract next year, and you know, this will allow us to prove if this method works or not. There's no guarantee that in the next contract it's going to solve any of the problems now. We're just going to continue to kick the can down the road with this. It's just my opinion.
If we're choosing to put any dollar amount into this, I think we need to know what plan we just can't put money there saying we're going to pick up the trash and not have a plan of how we're going to accomplish that. Is it that we're going to go out to bid and look for somebody to do this trash pickup? Are we going to sit down with our current trash hauler that we just extended their thing and renegotiate or amend their contract? We need to know what we're going to do, I think, before we move this money, before we do anything with this, with anything, with any amount of money. We need to know what we're going to do. It's not a matter of just, we're going to put money there to pick up their trash. How are we going to pick up their trash?
Well, I didn't know if we could use this. Oh, sorry, sorry to cut you off. You can keep going, Mr. President.
No, go ahead.
I just didn't know if we could do something similar to what we did with the school department last year, where we put 100,000 aside for books. And then if they needed it, we released it. I know that was a different situation altogether, but I didn't know if we could put aside, say, the 18,000, you know, if they come up with a plan and, you know, it works and checks out with our DPW and the administration, and it's a plan that's agreed upon, we could then release the money down the line. It's just a thought. It's just another, I'm just trying to think of a solution here. That's all.
The plan needs to come from the town. The plan doesn't, if we're going to put money in the budget for the town to pick up the trash at High Rocks, it has to be a town plan. It's not a plan that they come up with. It needs to be a plan that we understand that it's coming through the town. I think that's the misunderstanding here. We're not going to let them dictate to us how we're going to pick up their trash. We need to understand, if we want to pick up their trash, how we're going to pick up their trash and what the cost is going to be. Mr. Zwolenski.
Mr. President, I subscribe to what you're saying. The town has to have a plan. But if we don't put money into the budget right now, then it's another year off. And then we're going to contractual negotiations for trash pickup again next year. It's another year. I'm liking what Mr. Ogier said. If we can put it, we're putting a lot of things into contingency funds. And by the way, you know, all these things we're putting into contingency, we need to identify them so that if we do need to draw down, we put X amount of money in, then we can reallocate it as we need it. But if y'all remember, it was back in the fall when Mr. Royce came in with a number of residents and they were asking for us to consider it. And we said, yeah, we'll consider that, but we have to do it at budget time. We also, Council O'Hara brought up the very good point that the vehicles, many of them are not registered there. One of the things I always say is we don't register their dogs until they show that their vehicles have been registered in town. That the real estate departments of these places, maybe not so much High Rock, they require that for liability, that their pets get licensed. They should have their vehicles licensed here in North Smithfield. But you know what? Last fall, we led these people to feel that, you know what, come budget time, we didn't say we were going to support it, but they left there feeling that we were going to give them consideration. Now comes COVID. Now no longer is it one child per seat on the bus. Excuse me, it has to be one child per seat on the bus. We're in unknown, uncharted waters here, but I can tell you, I'm still going to side with those 128 residents, regardless of what happened before. The developers are out of the piece now. We're dealing with homeowners that are not getting service and are paying for it. So I'm still going to support that we put money. I will meet Councilor Ogier, put it in the contingency fund until we figure this out, because Valley can continue going in there and taking that trash out. So that's my position. When those folks were before us in the fall, we said, we're going to consider this. And you know what? We were kind of positive in our attitude about considering this. Yes, COVID's thrown a monkey wrench into a lot of things. I still will stand that there are 128 residents. I don't know how many people, but there's more than 128 people living there, and they deserve the services. They're paying, you know what they are? They're a cash cow for this town. We need to give them services. They're not getting, I don't know how many children are registered in the school department. They're a cash cow. We need to give them some type of service. Thank you, Mr. President.
Mrs. Bonioli?
Mr. Smolenski, are you proposing they continue with their own service and we provide funds for that? Because I believe the administrator a couple weeks had said Mega would need to subcontract to Valley and it would be around 21,000. Am I wrong on that?
Well, Councilor Bartimoli, I'm not going to get into the process of it. I want to make sure that these folks have revenues, have some money to help them. If they do contract with Valley and it goes up to 21, well, they're going to have to make that shortfall up of the common area maintenance of $3,000. Right now, I'm saying they should have $18,000 to help them defray their residents. And if for some reason, until we get a contract, we get the process established of how this trash is going to be removed, I think that they should have some relief over there. And at $18,000, I can't speak for the residents over there, but if I had a council person saying, we're going to give you 18, if it costs you 22, you have to put in the other 4, I'd be kind of happy with that, because much of the biggest part of that, remember, they're already paying for this. They're not getting it. They're paying this in their taxes. So I don't know how else to articulate this. So I think at this point, I'm just going to sit back and be quiet unless somebody says something inflammatory, then I'll be back. Thank you, Mr. President.
So you're suggesting that we just take $18,000 and give it to High Rocks for trash removal?
No. We're going to run it right through town finance as we always would. And that money, whether Mega or Valley picks up the trash, those are the people that would get paid $18,000. If it exceeds that amount, then it's going to be up to the residents over there to pick up that difference.
How do we accomplish that?
By approving $18,000 tonight, Mr. President.
To Terry's point, I think it was 21,000. That was my question. Is are we?
Right.
You either got to fund it at the amount that it's going to allow the town to adequately provide the service, or I don't know how you can fund it. I think it's one of those all or nothing type situations. The only reason I was saying put it in contingency is, Paul's right. We are putting a lot in the contingency, and we don't know what's coming down the pipeline. But at least then we would have the ability down the line. Once we get further clarity, we would have that option that we have this money set aside for the trash service. I would think you would want to fund it at the 21,000, which is the rate that that would be needed, which is the rate that we would provided, a month ago?
Refresh my memory, who provided us with the 21,000?
The administrator did.
The administrator told us that they had spoken to Mega. Mega would pick up the trash for an additional $21,000.
Because,
Am I correct, Mr. Administrator?
It was on that order. I don't remember if it was 21 or 22, but yes, we had a quote from Mega for processing that operation through Valley.
because.
And that was my point when we first started this, that if we're gonna make that move to pick up the trash there, it needs to be the town that's doing that. And we need to know how we're gonna do that. Is it gonna be, we're gonna go out to bid and get someone individual to go and pick up that? Or are we gonna amend Mega's contract? If we want to amend the contract, we need to know what that number is to put it in the budget. That was
Sorry,
my,
Mr. President, go ahead.
we need to know what the plan is going forward.
For some reason, I thought there were two proposals. and I'm a little, Mr. President, you know, this affects 128 residents. If I were to make a motion now to continue the public hearing so that Mr. DeBrois could, and it would have to be supermajority or unanimous, to allow Mr. DeBrois to address this situation. I want to make sure, Mr. Igliozzi, would that be okay to do that?
Mr. Vice President, I think you could make a motion to allow him to speak without asking the public hearing to be reopened, because the public hearing is not on a agenda. But
Okay,
you could allow a member of the public to speak by a vote of the council. to
Thank
the
you.
issue.
Thank you,
The
Solicitor.
question is, can the clerk allow one person in, or is it all or nothing?
All he has to do is unmute himself with permission from the council.
So there's your answer. It's up to the, I think it would take a vote of the council.
I just don't think it, I personally, Mr. Zelinski, in all due respect to the solicitor, I don't need to hear from anyone at High Rocks. We need to decide, do we want to do this and how are we going to do this? That's what's before us. We've heard all the testimony from Mr. DeBrois, and it didn't start in the fall. It only started in the middle of the winter in February when he first came to us. And we did tell him that we would look into this. And the administrator and the Department of Public Works looked at it as part of that bid process that was out there. And we came in that it wasn't going to work the way we were looking to do it. And that in order to continue to do it the way they were doing it, Mega would have to get into a subcontract with Valley to pick up the trash. And we said we weren't going to do that till we got to budget time. Here we are in budget time now. And that's my point. What plan are we going to go with? Do we want to pick up their trash? Yes or no? If we want to do that, how much are we going to fund them? And what's the method that we're going to use to do it? That's where we're at right now. I don't need to have any other input from Mr. DeBrois or the other 128 homeowners right now. We're not at that point. We don't need that input. We've been there. We've heard it all. Just
I think I remember a proposal of being less than 21K. I would like, maybe you don't have to hear it, Mr. President, but I'm going to make a motion that we allow Mr. DeBrois to re-enter and have a comment. So, Mr. President, I'd like to make a motion that we allow Mr. DeBrois to address this. That's a motion.
There's a motion. Is there a second?
Is Mr. Ogier frozen? I don't see him.
No, I just have a hard time seconding this. You know, we went down this route last year and we started inviting people in for conversations and.
Oh, no.
No, let me finish, Paul. I just find it really slippery because if we allow one person to speak that's kind of an expert on this, we're going to have to start allowing a bunch of people to start speaking anytime they want to chime in. That's just the that's the tough part for me. I'll second it so at least it can go to a vote, but I just think it's a tough thing to delineate who can speak and who can't. It wasn't really advertised that we were going to be taking public comments.
Mhm.
And that's where I have the issue with. If we had said we're going to allow public comment on budgetary line items, then, you know, we should advertise it like that. Most people log on to hear our deliberations. We've had this open for a month. And we've been talking about this for a lot longer. I see Gary has a thing, so.
Yeah, but no, I just want to correct, at least what I interpreted last year's budget, Mr. Ozier, was that we actually said the meeting was closed, and the president at that time executed presidential chairperson rights.
Well, the hearing is
to allow people in to speak. And
No,
yes,
let's clarify this right now.
Sure, let's please.
When we were doing budget deliberations last year, I didn't allow anybody to speak. There was a motion made to allow the chairman of the school board to speak. And when we finished budget deliberations and we were talking about setting the tax rate, that's when I used my privilege to allow somebody to speak, not during budget deliberations. So let's be clear about that.
Well, you allowed people to speak, regardless.
Let's be clear about that. So there's a motion and a second to allow Mr. DeBrois to speak. Is there any other discussion? I'll address you in a minute, Mr. Rizowski.
And missed who seconded it. I apologize.
I seconded it, Lily.
Okay,
Mr. Ogier seconded.
Thank you.
Roll call vote.
Mrs. Bartamioli?
No.
Mrs. O'Hara?
No.
Mr. Ogier?
No.
Mr. Zelinski?
Yes.
Mr. Vadney?
No. Mr. Ezowski.
Okay.
Mr.
Just for-
Ezowski.
I was able to find, we got a proposal from MTG on June 8th for a total of $21,201 per fiscal year.
So if that's what the council's prerogative is to go and pick up the trash at High Rocks, that's the number that we need to be looking at. And that's the path that we need to be looking at, is to go and amend the contract with Mega to have that added to it. I think that's how we have to do this.
Mr. President, that's why I suggested we put
It's
it
not a
into
matter of putting
contingency.
a portion of money aside, and if it doesn't meet what the fee is, someone else pays for it. No, we pay for it. So if we're gonna do this, we need to fully fund it.
That was my argument, Mr. President, was that I don't think the 18 covered it. I think you're getting into a slippery slope if you underfund it. I don't even know if you can ask them to make up the difference. But if we put it in contingency and we can do it, great. If we can't because of COVID or what else, at least we know we have the money there, that if the rate comes in different or something, I think putting aside the money is at least a commitment that, you know, we recognize that there's a deficiency over there and we're trying to help them out as residential taxpayers.
So the 21,000 plus, was that for Mega to come and haul it away, or was that them through their subcontract? Now, that's a question I would, like, you know, I have no problem putting the money aside at all. So, Mr. Osier, you'd mentioned you wanted to fund it properly. Would you be considering to make a motion of $21,000 to be put in a contingency fund? Because if you don't, I will.
I would say we need to fund it if we're going to fund it. I think underfunding it is not smart.
Okay.
And I was the main motion. I was the secondary. So it doesn't matter who makes it. I just think that it should go to a contingency so that if we can do it, we have the funds. If we can't and something happens on the vendor side or whatnot, and it doesn't allow for this year, you know, the money's there at least.
Mr. President, I'm going to withdraw my motion to amend it. I'm going to withdraw my amendment.
You're gonna withdraw the motion for rubbish disposal in the amount of
18.
616, 632?
Well, I was trying to amend and put in $18,000 for rock.
Right. So you're withdrawing the
High
amended
Rocks.
you're withdrawing the amended motion.
Yes.
And the second withdraws his amended motion?
Yep.
Okay, so now we're back to the original motion. The main
Yeah,
motion was, and that was made by you, Mrs. Zelinski, and seconded by Mr. Ogier, in that amount of 616, 632,
816,
816.
316.
816, 832.
Yes.
So
and then-
that's what the motion is right now.
correct. And
If you want to amend it, now you can amend it.
yes, I would like to see what I'm still not clear about, whether this 21,000 plus was for Mega to pick it up, or was it going through a subcontractor? Because it went through a if Mega touches
Subcontractor.
this, that has to go up. Did somebody say something?
I think it was subcontractor from what
Yeah,
the administrator was saying.
That's
okay.
right.
But it's
Okay.
it's a proposal from MTG to pick up the trash. I don't care who they use.
I don't either. Who's ever the most efficient.
The agreement is going to be with MTG to pick up the trash at High Rocks, whatever the address is, One Tupper Drive or whatever it is, for $21,201. That's what we have if we want to pick up the trash over there. That's the only agreement that we have, or the only potential agreement that we have right now.
Then I would like to make that motion that we include 21,000. How many hundred? 21,000 what?
201.
$21,201 so that trash services can be provided to the ratepayers in their homes.
So the motion, there's a motion by Mrs. Zelinski to amend the main. Is there a second? Second has to amend as well.
Oh, yeah. I'll second for discussion.
Okay, so the main maker and the second have amended the main motion to increase it by $21,201. Mr. Ogier.
So are we just adding it to the line item, or are we gonna place it in contingency?
Either, contingency, I'm fine with that, Mr. Ogier.
I would just think we would have to make sure that the language was clear, that's all.
And Mr. Igliozzi.
And maybe David has a question, it looks like.
Mr. Igliozzi, I think, wants to address that.
Yeah, if the council does take this action, I would recommend that it go into contingency, and we would have to confirm whether or not the bidding rules have been complied with. If they haven't, they would have to go out to bid, but at least you have a sense of what it would cost. As the president pointed out, this may have to go out to bid. This is the first I knew that about this was going to be discussed this way tonight, so I don't have that answer. But I would guess that it would.
So based on the advice of the solicitor, what I'm going to ask two council people to do is to withdraw the amended motion. Leave the existing motion, the main motion that we've already made, in place. And when we go back and look at contingency, we put it in or we put it up for discussion at contingency. Because we actually haven't done anything with contingency. We put that in abeyance as we went through this whole thing. We actually haven't put any money into contingency yet. We've made cuts in the budget with the thought of moving it into contingency, but we actually haven't officially moved anything into contingency. Contingency is still an undone budget. We put that in abeyance the other day, last night, to continue to move this with the thought process that those cuts we were making, we're going to move into contingency.
Fair enough. Yeah.
So are you withdrawing your amendment?
So at this point, I think we're still looking at $816,832. Is that correct?
Yes, but I'm going to ask you just to withdraw your motion and withdraw the second amendment, the amended motions. You got to withdraw.
I withdraw the amended motion.
And the second withdraws as well. So now we're back with the main motion. Is there any other discussion on the main motion for rubbish disposal in the amount of $816,832? Hearing none, roll call vote.
Mrs. Barnamoli?
Yes.
Mrs. O'Hara?
Yes.
Mr. Ogier?
Yes.
Mr. Zelinski?
Yes.
Mr. Vadney,
Yes. And we'll revisit this when we do the contingency budget. Moving on to page 11. Debt service principal in the amount of $3,118,760. Is there a motion to approve debt service principal in the amount of $3,118,767?
So moved.
Motion by Mrs. Bottomoli. Is there a second? Second by Mr. Walensky. Any discussion? Hearing none, roll call vote.
Mrs. Barnamoli?
Yes.
Mrs. O'Hara? Mrs. O'Hara?
Yes.
Okay, sorry, I didn't hear it. Mr. Ogier?
Yes.
Mr. Zelinski?
Yes.
Mr. Vadney,
Yes. Next is debt service interest in the amount of $1,034,682. Is there a motion to approve debt service interest in the amount of $1,034,682?
So moved.
By Mrs. Walensky, is there a second? Second, by Mrs. Bottomoli. Any discussion? Roll call vote.
Mrs. Barnamoli?
Yes.
Mrs. O'Hara?
Yes.
Mr. Ogier?
Yes.
Mr. Zelinski?
Yes.
Mr. Vadney,
Yes. Next item is employee benefits in the amount of $2,731,090. Is there a motion to approve employee benefits in the amount of $2,731,090?
So moved.
Motion by Mrs. Walensky. Is there a second?
Second.
Mrs. Bottomoli.
Discussion. I do have
Under
a question.
discussion. Mrs. Bottomoli.
This would go to the finance director. I don't know, out in my world, my mother with COVID, a lot of dental insurance companies are giving a reduced premium or a refund. And did we receive anything on our dental coverage?
No, we did reach out to the trust about actually Blue Cross, because Blue Cross is giving credits also.
Yes.
And because we're self-insured under this group, we don't qualify for that.
Okay.
We get a lower rate because we're under the trust. We're considered self-insured under the trust.
Okay. I was
Right.
just,
Okay.
Yeah, the difference is, if I might, Mr. President,
Go ahead.
we would yield a benefit if, we yield a benefit when the costs to the plan are reduced,
okay.
the way this system is managed.
All
So
right.
our circumstance is different from the common Blue Cross arrangement because of the manner with which we purchase our coverage as a group, as the finance director has explained, that we can't get that immediate Blue Cross. It will come to us eventually, potentially, when the whole thing, we see the full cycle. I've heard from the trust, what we've heard from the trust is that they expect some of the things that were saved or the reduced costs to actually surge. Someone puts off some, medical procedures. Many have put off medical procedures, but it doesn't mean that they're not going to be done. So the cost to the plans will still be there, if that all makes sense.
Thank you.
Mr. Zelinski.
Yeah, Mr. Administrator, I may have heard you incorrectly last night, but I know that the Budget Committee, you may have also addressed the optional post-employment benefits. Was that you, sir? Do you have any thoughts on that?
Oh, I do. I was about to interject, if I could, that, Mr. President, if you will.
Go ahead.
As everyone here, I suspect, not everyone, but many here know, we have looked at this post-employment benefit issue over the last 3.5 years and been trying to recognize and deal with the long-term $6 million obligation that we have in that area. And like everything else, we know that while we know that we can't just knock it out in any one year, we don't need to. What we needed to do was bring the annual contribution up to something that would knock it out in a reasonable timeline. And in this circumstance, it could be as much as 20 years. And we've looked at the annual allotment side of this. We've also looked at the healthcare and employee contract plan side of it. And as we've talked about in other discussions, we have changed the police contract to a circumstance that will help reduce our OPEB liability through the change in the police contract. So all of that said, this has been an important issue that we all have worked on over the past 3.5 years, this council and the one before it. And we have raised that contribution from what it was at $100,000 and adding $50,000 per year. And this year was my original budget plan was to raise it again by $50,000 to $250,000. And this is one of those circumstances that I look at and say, it's not what I want to do, but it is absolutely what I believe we are forced to do. It is the quintessential kick the can down the road maneuver that anyone can claim. And I would say, yeah. The reality is, I don't think we have any other choice. I don't want to zero it. I will look at, my recommendation to you tonight will be to reduce my original recommendation of $250,000 to $100,000, the same that it was back in 2017, and look forward to, the years to come to try to build it up again, because we have to. We can't just let that linger out there as a liability. It must be recognized as we look at our overall financial obligation. It is one of those things that is looked upon in the bonding process when or if we look to qualify for future bonding. So yes, I would recommend that this amount the $2,731,000 and $90 be reduced by $150,000, with that amount of money also being able to be held aside in the contingency fund as another significant piece of our ability to be able to manage the potential loss of the revenue side in state aid to education in particular.
I have a question of the finance director. I don't know if you have this, an easy answer to this. Retirees, health insurance for retirees. How many people do we currently have in there?
$18.
18 people?
Mm-hmm.
And I would have to agree with the administrator. It's not, originally when OPEB started back in 2010, 2011, I personally didn't see the need for it, because if you look through this, you see we're paying health insurance for retirees, dental insurance for retirees, life insurance. When we pay these things as we go along. We pay on a yearly basis. So I was of the opinion that, you know what, we really don't need this. We pay as we go. We're not some of these other communities that aren't paying this stuff and putting the people out there, and they're not properly funding it, and they got pensions that are out of whack. And our pensions are fine. We pay our benefits every year on the retirees as we go along. So I really didn't see the value in this until about 4 years ago, when I started looking into it better as the town started ramping up and putting more money into it. I was still of the opinion saying, no, this isn't what we should be doing. But then in looking into it better, it's a requirement now of government accounting standard practice that this is what you need to do to show that you are putting money in. And yeah, so we may not have the same risk and liability that other communities do, but it's a piece of the puzzle now in a government accounting that you need to be putting money into an account. So if God forbid something happens that the town goes bankrupt, these people that'll do retired benefits, there's a pool of money there to pay for it. That's what the point of it is. It's not that we're not funding it and that we're underfunded, because we do. We fund it fully. We see it every year. Our pensions are in great shape because we fully fund them every year. This is just a government accounting practice in that we need to put the money in there to get in line. And so, yeah, we've been building it up because there is a target number. I don't know exactly what it is, but there is a target number that they want you to get to, so that if you don't touch it, it grows and it continues to carry enough funds to be able to manage this account as time goes on. So yeah, the council, I can't take credit for it because I've only been here, this is only my second budget. So but previous councils have been funding it, moving it along, and we're getting into a good position where we're having a good value in there. We're having a good value that the auditors, everybody was looking, saying, yep, you're doing the right thing. Keep down this path, you're doing the right, and now we're going to take a step back. And it's just a reality of what we're facing this year, that there's a lot of things that we're going to have to, that we had plans going and that we've been following over 3, 4, 5 years. And now we got to say, wait a minute, let's take a step back. Road resurfacing, we're going to be looking at some of it in capital, I'm assuming. And so it's one of those things that we got to make the hard choice and say, you know what, we need to step back. It doesn't mean that we ignore it and do away with it, but it'll come back. Who's ever sitting here next year is going to come back and say, okay, what are we going to do? We need to get back and start down the road again. So I kind of agree with the administrator. It's not what we want to do, but it's an evil necessity, I guess, of this budget cycle. Mr. Rizowski?
Well, the other thing that we have done also is that we have an OPEB trust now. So this money that is put aside is growing in appropriate, is invested in appropriate instruments to make sure the money's there and to make sure that it in itself grows properly. We've hit all of the levers that we can. This is miserable to have to pull this one back, but I would rather do this than be in a circumstance where we have to, as I said yesterday, be in a circumstance where we need, $1 million to help our, in effect, rescue our school department from a reduction in state aid to education. This has to go.
Any other comments or discussion? Is there, we already have a motion and a second. Who made the motion?
Mr. Zelinski.
Who was the second?
2,731,000. We didn't touch on the amendments. I asked the administrator to bring us
Yeah.
up. Yeah.
And who made the second, Ms. Scott?
Mrs. Barnamoli.
Mr. Barnioli. So I'll ask the question then. Did the main and the second want to amend their motion to reduce that number by $150,000?
Be 2,581,000.
Yep, 090.
I will amend the second to
Does the
show
main
that
make a-
reduction.
Main maker's willing, well, first of all, going to make the motion. I would follow the budget committee's recommendation to reduce it to 125, cut it in half, 50%. It shows good faith on our part, and we're putting it into a fund that'll generate some interest on it. But I'm open. Someone talk to me here. Let's go 100,000. I'm okay.
So we're gonna fund it for 100,000.
Yes.
So you'll amend your motion to reduce it by 150,000.
Councilor Bartamoli wants to say something. All right, can you see?
No, go ahead. Go ahead. You made the main motion.
You're the main maker.
100,000. Yep.
So
Oh, Mrs.
you'll make,
O'Hara?
Yeah, I want to make sure, what did the budget committee recommend?
125,000 to fund it for 125.
Okay, good, because they've been working on that, and if they see a justification, let's go with them. That's what they've been doing.
Okay.
All right.
So it's for the
you're the
100,000?
main maker.
Yeah.
you-
Let me withdraw and start all over again. I want to make a motion to amend I want to get the exact amount, the $2,731,000 and reduce the OPEB to, as recommended by the budget committee, to $125,000.
So a reduction in that line item of 120,000.
50%, yes.
So the main maker amends his motion to reduce that line item by 125,000. Does the second amend motion?
I withdraw my second. Can I do that?
No,
Okay, then
you
I will-
can amend the motion for discussion.
I would like to then second and amend the motion for discussion to reduce it to the 100,000.
Okay,
Don't even put
That's
that.
under
I
the
would like to
discussion.
amend my motion.
okay. So the main maker and second have amended the motion to reduce it by 125,000. Now we have discussion. Mr. Ogier, you had your hand up earlier.
Yeah, I think this is one of those situations where real-time numbers should play a factor. The budget committee presented their cuts over a month ago, and it's clear that the situation with COVID and the state funding and all that is very fluid. We don't really know how much is going to be coming back. I would think that the numbers that were provided at last night's meeting were the more real-time numbers. And in this instance, I would side with Gary and say that we should cut it to 100,000. I get the extra 25 is a good faith, but we have future years to refund it. And, that 25,000, if it can go towards schools or something else, that 25,000 in this budget's a lot. I agree with Terry as well. I think we should put it at 100,000 and move on.
Okay, Mrs. Bonioli?
No, I'm all set.
Okay. Mrs. O'Hara? You have any other comments? Is she frozen?
No, I'm thinking, no,
Oh.
I'd like to be, but, all right,
We have to call the vote. When we call the vote, if it fails, then we'll make it
Yeah,
100,000.
Okay.
Right?
the motion has been amended. The main maker has amended the motion. The second has amended to reduce it by $125,000. Call the vote. Roll call vote.
Mrs. Barnamoli?
No.
Mrs. O'Hara?
No.
Mr. Ogier?
No.
Mr. Zelinski?
Yes.
Mr. Vadney,
No. So now we're back, so everyone's on the same page. We're back at square one now. The main motion of 273,090. 2731, I mean, 90. I'll make a motion. All right, well, I-
So the new motion is back to the original to approve.
right, well, so we're back at the main motion because the amended motion.
Making
so-
sure.
So we're back in discussion. Obviously, the 125 didn't go anywhere. Do we want to try 150 and
To cut at 150, right?
recommendation? Well, it has to go back to the main maker to make the amendment, or they have to withdraw their motions. If they withdraw their motions, we can start all over again.
Paul, I just have a question. Oh,
Okay,
sorry,
go
Terry, you
ahead.
can go.
No, go
I-
ahead.
Oh, I just wanted to know, when you said 150, you're talking about cutting it from 250 by 150, right?
Correct.
just wanna make sure I'm following the
Reducing that line-
numbers.
Reducing the line item by 150,000.
To 100,000.
That's
Yep.
what I thought. I just wanted to clarify.
I
It
would,
it did sound a little vague, Council Ozier.
So we got two choices. The main and second can amend their motion, or they can withdraw their motion and we start all over again.
I withdraw my second.
Does the main withdraw his motion?
If you just cut, the motion failed. So
No,
now,
the amended motion, we had a main motion and then we amended it. The amendment failed, which puts us back at the main motion, which is where we are right now.
Mhm.
We have two choices. We can amend that main motion again, something different, or we can withdraw it and start all over again.
I withdraw my motion, Mr.
Okay,
President.
so the motion and second have been withdrawn. Does the clerk's following me, right?
Yes.
I think she is. It's
I
maybe.
got it. I got it.
Okay. I'm gonna make a motion for employee benefits in a total amount of $2,581,090, which is a reduction of $150,000 from the employee benefits line.
Second.
Second. Second by Mrs. Barnamoli. Discussion. Hearing none, roll call vote.
Mrs. Barnamoli,
Yes.
Mrs. O'Hara, Mr. Ogier,
Yes.
Mr. Zelinski,
Yes.
Mr. Vadney,
Yes. They're not easy. It's not going to get easier. We know that. Next item is insurance. $278,641. Is there a motion to approve the insurance, the amount of $278,641?
I'll move, Mr. President.
Zelinski, is there a second?
Second.
Second by Mr. Ogier and Mrs. Barnamoli. Any discussion? Roll call vote.
Mrs. Barnamoli,
Yes.
Mrs. O'Hara,
Yes.
Mr. Ogier,
Yes.
Mr. Zelinski,
Yes.
Mr. Vadney,
Yes. Page 12 of 13. We have no settlement obligations. Next item is capital expenditures. And the recommended number is $737,824. Is there a motion to approve capital expenditures of $737,824? And we know I know it's going to get amended, but you got to go through the process. Is there a motion to approve that?
Motion.
Motion by Mrs. Barnamoli. Is there a second? I'll second for discussion. Mr. Administrator.
Thank you, Mr. President. Once again, there's no joy in Mudville here. These are all items that, there's nothing in this budget that isn't here because there's good reason. Everything in it is here for a good reason. And it's only because we're forced into this circumstance by the threat of the reduction in state aid that I even find myself able to make these recommendations. So yes, I had my recommendation for that line was a total of, well, help me folks, 707, excuse me, yes, $717,304. As you can see, the budget committee had a couple of items that I had denied, I guess,
You didn't.
lack of better terms, or didn't accept. So those are out there too. But I asked that you consider removing the demolition of the Stamina office building. Which, you know, we've tried to get down and have hit complications with funding. I am trying to find, I've pressed EPA and had lengthy conversation with some leadership at EPA over the past month, that with hope that they will, you know, finally come around to recognizing that their action on that property warrants that they should take that building down at no cost to the town. But we still have a responsibility to the neighbors that, you know, in the village, that it should come down. So it was in the budget. I have to say that we exclude that $25,000 provision for demolition of the Stamina office building at this time. I also recommend, painfully recommend the reduction of $25,000 for the schoolhouse restoration. We've all been thrilled with the work that our heritage group, our historical commission and association has worked to do to keep that building. You know, I credit one volunteer, frankly, with doing things that have kept it from falling down all by himself. I don't want to eliminate this, but I feel that, again, if it becomes a circumstance that forces us to take money away from our education budget to the extreme that this might be this year, then we have to wait a year to do that. And then the next two are DPW circumstances. Our main fleet of plow trucks has been upgraded substantially over the past, I guess, 6 years to 7 years, admirably by multiple councils, with 2 trucks a year for a time, and then 1 truck a year in my administration. As we've been able to catch up, we still have some catching up. We have still have some older vehicles that are limping along, and this would be taking one of those out. But it's going to have to limp along for another year if we don't get our aid to education. And then finally, this was to be the first payment of 2 payments over 2 years to acquire and replace our street sweeper. And I have to ask that that be removed. So the total of those is $315,000 to be reduced from the capital expenditure line by my recommendation.
Gary, is there any, I know that we've been on a program, we get on, we get off, and that's unfortunately what happens, and 4 cruisers with the police department.
We need those cruisers, Mr. President.
That's why I ask.
I've toured I've inspected the vehicles along with members of the Asset Management Commission. We absolutely need those vehicles, every one of them. That's not an area where I can recommend that we make any change. I wish I could, I cannot.
Mr. President?
Mr. Zelinski.
Yeah, I agree with the administrator on the cruises. We can't ask our our officers to be in vehicles that have high mileage on them. Who knows what's going on structurally underneath there? We, in the past, have always gone, and it's subject to change with every council, 4 vehicles as needed 1 year, 3 the next year as needed. We're on a cycle of 4, 3, 4, 3. So this year we're on 4. And it'll be up to the next town council to decide if they want to do 3 or 4 as need. They may need 4 next year, but the 4, 3 seem to work well for the fleet. I'd like to commend the administrator for making you just made some hardcore cuts, and I support those that you just made to capital. It's difficult to do, but we have to do it.
Lily, did I make that motion?
Nope, Mrs. Barnamoli did. You seconded it.
I seconded it.
Yes.
So I would like to amend my motion for the capital expenditures to be reduced by $315,000.
Second will amend.
May I speak? Please keep in mind that the lowering of that is based on the budget committees, and it's a little different than the administrator. Just keep that in mind.
Okay. So I should be amending it off of the budget committee?
Correct.
Okay.
That's what we were approving,
Right.
the budget committee's number. They have 2 things that they were suggesting or recommending the purchase of that the administrator was not.
Okay, so I would.
One was in the fire department. I think they were both in the fire department. One was for a chest compression system, and
It was a speed measuring device for the police department.
It was a traffic data collector in the amount of $5,000.
yeah,
And 15,500 for Lucas chest compression system for the fire department. So that was the difference in their budget between the administrators and the budget committee of $20,500.
so the motion's been amended and the second's been amended so that the new number is now $422,824.
Mr. President,
Mr. Zelinski.
I'm sorry, Mr. Iglesias had his hand up first.
David?
Mr. President, I just wanted to remind the council, you're making the motion, but are you also adopting those cuts along with it?
We're amending the main motion, David.
But are you gonna,
Amendments to the motion, we're amending the main motion.
so when you reduce the amount, is the cuts being included as represented by the administrator?
I get what your point is.
That's my point.
We
Sorry.
just, we lowered the number without saying this is what we lowered it by.
Yes, that is what I was going to ask. Okay.
So
Okay.
we'll clarify that then.
So I am amending
Well, I
my,
got it, Terry. The main maker has amended the motion. The second's been amended to reduce that number to 422, 824, and it includes the cuts of a 6-wheel dump truck for $175,000, $90,000 for a street sweeper, $25,000 for the demolition of the Stamina Mill office building, and $25,000 for the exterior restoration of the Little Red Schoolhouse.
I have to comment, I guess, let's say what's in my head right now. I mean, this really hurts. But I have to advocate that you go forward in that, you know, in other discussions, I've not been shy about saying that the town of North Smithfield has been underspending in its capital obligations by well over $1 million a year. We're going backwards. You know, anyone looking at how this budget is coming together or falling apart.
Coming apart.
He's got to understand that this is, you know, there are some who only want to focus on the tax rate. I really don't care about the tax rate. That, and maybe that's harsh, but what I care about is making sure that the town of North Smithfield has what it needs to be able to operate. And I think that's what we have done collectively over the past 3.5 years, is try to do that. And, you know, whether the tax rate goes up by 2.5 or 1.5 or 3.5, the issue comes down to the value that we deliver. And the cuts that we're making here are cuts in that value that are just dreadfully unfortunate. I don't know how else to say it. But that said, I have to encourage you, yes, you need to do this. Thank you.
Mr. President, if I may.
Go ahead, Mr. Zwolenski.
Mr. President, last night we heard from Mr. Porter, Jeff Porter, who's a member of the planning board, very articulate, very organized. I've been fortunate to have 2 conversations with him. Though it's listed on our capital budget sheet, it would be coming out of the bond money for a study at Hallowell for $40,000. Last night, Mr. Porter indicated that that would not be enough to facilitate professional Hallowell study being done. I'm not sure of that. You know what? He's an expert in this field, but I promised him that I would bring up that we review prior to COVID, as we all attended the meeting at Hallowell, to phase, rehabilitate and repurpose Hallowell is what we were going to do. And I would just like to remind everybody that we have a lot of volunteers out there, highly skilled volunteers, Mr. Porter being one of them. We have the Senior Citizens Committee, Budget Committee, Conservation Commission, I'm gonna forget one, Asset Management, Heritage, Historical, Planning, Zoning. There are people on these boards and commissions that are just waiting to dive into this. And hopefully, phase 3, we're gonna be able to accommodate meetings so that we can get this going. Again, one more time, I'm blowing smoke here, but Mr. Porter was very, very impressive in his approach to, so it's coming out of a bond, 40K. It may not be enough, but before we go out for an RFP, I certainly would hope that the town creates this committee and that we take their valuable input on what their vision is for the use of this property. So I'm pontificating a wee bit here, but I did not want that to get lost in the budget cycle. So thank you for allowing me to enter into that, Mr. Bentley.
I don't even believe it's in this budget, even though it says
No.
coming from the bond. I don't even think it's included.
Yes, it's listed on the budget sheet. It's part of the bond money. It's 40K coming out of bond, which may or may not be enough. I'm not advocating to raise it. I'm speaking that we need to get going on Hallowell.
I'm not even saying I'm saying it's not there, Paul. There was a number put there, but it wasn't approved by anybody.
Well, then we need to form this committee.
There's $0 now. And the reality of it is, I don't think you can use that bond money to do the study.
I got it, Paul. It's here. I can read it. I see it. But my point is,
I have the same paper, but it's not approved. Read it. There's zeros all the way across.
I see it, Paul. What I'm doing is I'm advocating to get this committee going so we can repurpose Hallowell is what I'm talking about. So if one were to look at that and they say 40K, I know it's not there. I can see that, but it's on there listed as 40K. Last night we had, Mr. Porter spoke about it may or may not be enough money. I get it, but we need to get this committee going.
Mr. Yuzovsky?
Councilman, we already have an RFP crafted and are ready to move on that right now.
Okay. It would have been nice to have a committee weigh in on it, Mr. Administrator.
We're the administration's moving forward as we are challenged to do every day.
There's a motion and a second. Any other discussion?
Mr. President, I have a question. I know yesterday there was a lot of talk of structural deficits, and I'm not advocating we ever go down that route. But what could we use part of the general fund to cover some of the capital if we needed?
You can.
Because it's a one-time expense. These are tough cuts, but that's a rainy day fund, and this is a rainy day scenario. So I was just kind of curious as to why there was no consideration to utilize that.
It's not covering salaries, it's not covering benefits, it is
Right,
a,
it's a one-time expenditure.
that's
And that
right.
that was my comment last night, that we were discussing parts of the budget where everyday occurrences in our budget, and that's when I made that comment, we don't want to take that. It wasn't in regard, we weren't even talking about capital at the time.
Right.
We can do one-time capital expenditures out of the reserve. I don't think to this level, though, we're not, two things we got to remember is we made these cuts. We're making these cuts on an assumption that state aid is going to get cut by 25%. But we don't know that. So we're kind of making the cut in case we're being proactive isn't the right word, but we're making these cuts so that we don't set a budget and a spending plan and then find out, hey, we lost $1 million of our revenue. How are we going to fix that? So we're making these cuts and hopefully putting it in contingency so we can pull it back out if everything comes back where we hope it will be. And so, yeah, it's a tough call to pull this and to not do it. But we have to hope that we can go back and possibly do this when all the budget stuff is done at the state. They're really the ones that are giving us all this angst because they didn't do their job. I firmly believe they didn't do their job by even addressing the budget at all. They haven't done it. And they're relying on the federal government to bail them out, and they're waiting and dragging their feet. They didn't want to make a commitment, but they want us to make a commitment. It just, and when we get to the next, we're going to get to that part when we do the revenue side. We're lucky, believe it or not, that we don't have that reliance on the state of 80% of our budget or 75% of our budget. Could you imagine how we could do this if we're relying on the state for 75% of our budget? What would we do?
That's going to be a challenging formula.
I need to, Mr. President, if I might, I mean, a reserve, yes, can be used in extreme circumstances. But, you know, we passed a fund balance ordinance for a reason. It said that we need to keep the reserve between 12 and 16%. That's the way we maintain our solid AA bond rating. We go below that, or we start, and part of what all need to understand, at least as I see it, is that the bond rating agencies don't want to see $6 million there one day and $3 million the next day and $7 million a day after. They want to see steady performance. And so the idea that we, you know, okay, we're going to, you know, we go buy a ladder truck out of, we've got $6 million, it'll cost us $1 million to buy a ladder truck for the fire department, but we can do it. Well, no, that's not the thing to do, frankly, because we will go below our fund balance target. We will threaten our bond rating status. And we also weaken our position to be able to deal with the circumstance, as I talked about last night, where, you know, there are communities right now that are looking at what their cash flow is going to be just 2 weeks out. We're not in that circumstance because we have I don't call it a strong fund balance. We have a reasonable fund balance. There are communities in this state that have fund balances that are much higher than our 14%, much, much higher than our 14%. I think right next door in Burrable, it's well over 20%. Now, we don't need to go there, but we can't look at this as a circumstance that you know, we just, you know, grab money from it here and there. We'll wind up with a fund balance that'll be back down to $3 million in no time whatsoever and be wondering how it happened. That money needs to be there to assure that we have cash flow, such that, you know, if we are looking for state aid waiting for state aid to come in for a period of many weeks, we don't have to worry about making payroll. We can make payroll. Please try to keep that in mind as you know, these are not easy issues. I hope I can help you with that.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, no, I wasn't suggesting necessarily that we do it. I was just curious as to, what if we had thought about it. That's all. I'm not advocating that we set a precedent here by any means. I just know this is a tough year. I hope we don't see another year like this down the line, but we said the same thing after probably 08. You can't predict these types of black swans. So it's a tough situation. I was just curious as to if consideration had taken place. That's all. But I do appreciate the administrator's answer.
Every year we face this austere times. We have budgets. Wow, this is the perfect storm to wreak havoc with a budget. This just.
There's a motion and a second to approve a capital budget of $422,824. Roll call vote.
Mrs. Barnamoli?
Yes.
Mrs. O'Hara?
Yes.
Mr. Rozier?
Yes.
Mr. Zelinski?
Yes.
Mr. Vadney,
Yes. Next, School Department. The recommendation is $27,148,721. On this one, we need to make 2 votes on this. We need to vote on town appropriation, and then we need to vote on bottom line appropriation.
I really think that was 27 million, right, Mr. Vadney?
Yes. 27,148,000.
27,000.
That's unanimous. Let's just
That's
approve.
why Mr.
Everybody from the
Lombardi
school
fell off the
department just
chair.
passed out, yeah.
Boy, is that wishful thinking, huh? Yeah.
You can't even run a classroom for that. My mistake, sorry. What's the pleasure of the council?
I'll make a motion to approve for discussion, Mr. President.
Okay. The town appropriation number? We got to take it in 2 steps.
So I'm looking at the 27,100, give me eyesight, 148,721.
Okay, we got to take the first, we got to take the top number first. 20,701,519.
No, I'm going to retract. I want to start all over. I
Okay.
take it back. Mainmaker retracts his motion.
Okay. We need to vote on the town's appropriation before we can vote on the bottom line.
Mr. President, I'll make a motion that we approve $21,066,126. For discussion.
So wait, we're not approving the budget committee one?
We need to deal with the budget committee's numbers.
Well, we have the department's request. We have the administrator's proposal. I'm sorry, am I not following this?
Paul, you have to approve the budget committee one, and then we can amend it, I think, after that.
No problem.
we've been doing
We
it.
can only, by charter, we can only take action unless it's amended on the budget committee's numbers.
I've got a lot of breaking up. So, okay, budget committee, $20,701,000, $519. Open it up for discussion.
Motion by Mrs. Zelinski, is there a second?
Second.
By Mrs. Bottomoli, discussion. No discussion?
No, I just made the motion to, I'm going to make that motion to approve it then if there's no discussion.
No, we had a motion and a second.
Yep.
We're in discussion right now.
Yeah, I have no discussion.
Okay. No discussion? Vote.
Mrs. Barnamoli?
Yes.
Mrs. O'Hara? Mrs. O'Hara?
Yeah, I'm
I'm going to need clarification too.
yeah, there's something, or can I ask before voting? Do I have to vote and then ask? I have a question.
We've already called the vote.
Yeah, but if you're in the majority, you can bring it back up, Claire.
Okay, yes.
Mr. Rozier?
No.
Mr. Zelinski?
No.
Mr. Vadney,
Yes.
How do we reconsider what the department was requesting?
That's what I wanted to.
Yeah, if I may, Mr. Vadney, Mr. Igliozzi just raised his hand.
Mr. President,
David?
I deal with 3 votes in the affirmative, is that correct?
Correct.
One of the 3 votes in the affirmative can make a motion to reconsider, and it can be seconded by any one of the 5. And the motion will be back on the table.
But at this point,
And then amendments can be made, discussion as if it was just, again, just prior to the vote.
What was the affirmative? I didn't hear Claire's vote.
She voted,
Voted yes.
I said yes, but what I want to know, what is the budget committee and what did the school department ask?
so if you want to,
I don't understand the question, Mrs. O'Hara.
Okay, the amount that the budget committee recommended for the school department is what?
$20,701,519.
And what is the school committee asking?
21,
Their request was
$66,000.
$21,126.
And we're voting right now on the budget committee.
No,
We've
we already
voted
voted.
on the budget committee's number. Because
That's
that,
what we just-
those
that's what we
are
just
the-
voted
by
on.
charter, that's what we have to act on.
Okay,
We can vote no on it, but we have to act on their number.
okay. See, I was confused on that. I got a pen, I'm sorry.
Yeah, basically, I wanted to support the school committee's 21,066,000, but I was told I had to vote on the budget committee's 20,701,000.
But Claire, you can make a reconsideration.
Okay, that's what I wanted to do. I wanted to support the school committee, so I'm like, what did I do?
Mr. Igliozzi, could you help Councilor O'Hara with that?
Councilwoman O'Hara, if you want to reconsider, you can make a motion to reconsider this matter. And if it's seconded, it'll be brought back on the table. Or amended.
So I would be, if I'm voting on the budget committee, I
You're-
said yes, I should be saying no.
Then you should make a motion to reconsider.
Okay. I'll make a motion to reconsider.
I will second that.
Motion to reconsider in a second by Mrs. Zelinski. Any other discussion?
So I have a question, Mr. President. So if we fund at the 4%, they were willing to put money aside in contingencies. Are we talking about that here? I know there was spring sport contingency and
Busing,
some busing stuff and some other stuff. I mean, say we're talking about unknowns here all over the place, but say, for example, COVID spikes again and there's a mix of in-person, or, social distance, remote learning or, in-person learning or whatnot. There's the flip side that there could be cost savings. There could not be. We don't know. That's the challenge with this budget, and that's clearly been outlined. But I was just curious if that 4% increase includes contingency funds.
Contingency from where? From the town?
Well, yeah. Well, they said that it was that on their end. And so if we just on the 4%, they're gonna put aside that money. Is that how they agreed upon it? Because I know that Mr. Lombardi last night spoke about spring sports contingency because they don't know if they're gonna have a spring sport next year, or I know some schools are already starting to cut fall sports. It's kind of hard to think about football in a situation where that's a close contact sport. We're in a fortunate state where numbers are declining left and right. And, I think our situation is unique, but, there is the reality that all it takes is a spike and things could easily revert back. So I was just curious, do we just fund it and they make the contingencies to give back to the town, or is that?
The town gross appropriates the school department.
Right.
Town council has no say in how those funds are spent. We give them a bottom line, we give them the town's appropriation and a bottom line number, and they manage it. We do not have any say in how they spend their money. That's the law.
May I speak? Mr. President,
Yes.
I know that Mr. Vatney, Mr. Zelinski wants to possibly go to the 4%. But just keep in mind that we're going over the levy, the tax cap of 4%. Just keep that in your back of your head that we're gonna have to make a lot more cuts down the line to even meet or be below the 4% that the state will approve our tax levy to be. That's all.
Cynthia,
Okay.
you cut out there, but I heard we're going over the levy. Does that include the cuts we've already made so far?
So far, you've only made $150,000 cut. So we only had $100,000. Can you hear me?
You cut out.
You
I
keep
heard
cutting out,
$100,000.
you keep cutting out, Cynthia.
Okay, maybe if I go slow.
Maybe.
So far, we've only cut the budget by $150,000 for OPEB, correct?
No, because then we cut
No.
capital as well and
We
road
cut- yes,
resurfacing and all
Capital
that.
was 300, so, okay, so you got about 500,000 there.
We
So
cut
if-
out 350 from road resurfacing.
Road resurfacing, so I just want to keep in mind, we want to keep track of this because we cannot be over the levy tonight,
What we were hoping to do with those cuts was to put them in contingency.
right?
They weren't permanent cuts. They could be permanent cuts, but we were,
But that's what I understood, so I'm.
we were cutting them from the operational side of the budget and hoping to put it into the contingency piece of the budget,
Right,
so that if we are made whole, we can come back and backfill them.
okay,
So
so,
we made the cut, but we haven't gone back and put them anywhere else.
okay.
What's the total of cuts? So what do we have so far?
We have a total of 315 in capital and 500,000 in operating.
Not really 315,
No.
because we used the budget committee's cut for the
No,
budget.
No, we still cut the same number though.
Didn't matter. We
They
still
had the
cut.
same, they had this, yeah, we cut it by the same number, so
We've cut approximately $830,000 out of what was recommended by the budget committee.
3, 4,
Again,
What's
sir,
that?
835,000 so far.
835.
with the intention, my recommendation has been all along that that money be set aside as a reserve, as an alternative to a reduction in the $6 million that's shown in the second line here, the state aid number that is relied upon, the $6,006,868. That's where we're looking at the potential 25% cut. And now if you want to start taking that and apportioning it differently, you're going to wind up with nothing in the way of a reserve and having to find $1 million later, perhaps, if we wind up with that 25% reduction, 25% reduction in state aid. I mean, this is math that isn't going to work, folks.
President,
Still in body.
so what, I mean, we're somewhat arguing the same thing here. Reserves are reserves. We're just asking them to be targeted. So for example, if we can, if we have distant learning next year, we don't need $250,000 for busing. If we don't have sports next year, we don't need $100,000 in sports programs. So if there were targeted reserves put in for these reasons, then we would be able to operate. If you said, well, you can come back and ask later on, we would have to cut the budget that much, which means we would have to cut out teachers, we would have to cut out math interventionists, we would have to cut out a whole bunch of things that we don't want to do. If the money is there and you're parking it somewhere, someplace for us to use if we need it. If it's automatic, then we don't have to address it in our budget, because if it doesn't happen, we're budgeted okay. If it does happen, you're holding money here. It does not affect maintenance of effort unless we take it. And I think that's the way that the town protects themselves and properly funds the schools.
Mr. President, what this is a circumstance we don't know where this reserve will be needed. The issue is, if the state aid comes through in some reasonable amount, it can go back into the budget to buy the plow truck, to pave the roads, to help with the rebuilding of the schoolhouse. All of that money, if we're going to target it right now and say everything goes to schools, without knowing what is happening with state aid, then
Well, we already know that we're getting cut at least $300,000 from the state, and now with 350 from the town. We're just asking the town, please help us here and fund us. We'll take care of the 300,000, and then down the road, if there's $1 million cut, we're gonna have to deal with it.
And my suggestion to you, Mr. Chair, and to Mr. President and the council is that we need to keep all options open for the benefit of the entire town as it relates to the monies that we set aside.
But while you're holding that money that some people are prepared to give us, we're devastating the school department.
I'm not devastating anything, Mr. Lombardi. The state put us into this circumstance, and we're
Not yet. Not yet.
We're trying to figure out the best way forward. My recommendation will be that we're going to have a spending plan effective July 1st with this budget tomorrow, and we're going to hold off every opportunity we can on any of these options until we're absolutely forced to do it, potentially as late as August 15th.
But we'll be losing teachers. We can't wait that long. Our morale will go down the tubes. I mean, we need help here. That's why we're asking you for the 4%. But if things don't happen, then please keep the money. We don't need it. So that's why I'm asking you to put it in specific contingency accounts for specific purposes. And at the end of the day, if the state cuts us, we're going to be in the same place. It doesn't. We need the money anyway.
Mr. Lombardi.
Mr. President and the council, I stand by it.
Mrs. O'Hara.
For the schools to function reasonably, talking dollars and cents, as opposed to what they want to give you, how much more do you need exactly, or how much more can you, bottom number, do you need, bottom number for the schools?
So right now, we need to cut $650,000 out of the schools from the budget we presented to you. We only have seen that our costs are expanding. But what I'm asking for here is everything that the town can do is $350,000 approximately. The state, we're gonna have to find the cuts of $300,000. So if you appropriate us the $350,000, and that would be the 4%, then we'll have to cut $300,000, and then hopefully down the road, we don't get a secondary cut from the state. We will not have to lay off math interventionists. We will not have to, we will not have to lay off ELL people, and we'll manage our budget to the best of our ability.
Mr. Ogier.
I know the budget committee spent a lot of time on this, looking at it. It's a lengthy process. I was curious if we could get maybe their thoughts. I don't want to put them on the spot, but they did recommend a cut as well. I don't know if they have any insight on this as well. I know they're on the phone. I was on the budget committee and sat through a budget meeting, and we didn't get consulted a lot. So I do think we should value their input. I know they made a recommendation last night, and we kind of shot it aside as it related to the fund balance. So I would be curious to see what their thoughts are.
Mr. Wilbur? You got to unmute yourself. There you go.
So,
Oh, shit.
I think when we,
Well, that was loud and clear.
No, we can't put that in the budget.
so I think we need to be careful where we're going with this, right? Once we lock into 4%, we're going to lock into that for next year. I know the school needs it. They're good points, but I think we set a stage where Gary was going with this to put this into contingency. And I think that's where we were all going with this. And it seemed like a door just opened to take the school up to 4%. So not that I'm against it, but I think we just have to all be on the same page. and consider what we were targeting this whole time. So we've been 2 days targeting something, and now we're going somewhere else with it.
So Mrs. O'Hara's question was, your recommendation of 20,701,519.
I would stay with,
Recommendation was based on.
right now, I think we should stay with that number. I mean, I support Gary. I think that's the number that we came up with, Gary. And I support where he's going with this budget right now. And what he did say is if the school needs it, it's going to go into a contingency fund, and he's going to draw on that contingency fund and use it for the school. So that's what he's committed to, and I support that.
Can I ask a question, Mr. President, to
Yeah,
John?
go ahead.
So the 20,701,000, you also then made a recommendation for the 121,000 and the COVID adjustment. Are you saying we should scrap that and just follow the administrator's new proposal?
Right. I kind of like where he was going with the new proposal. I mean, I support what he came up with. We never had discussion, but last night was the first time I heard what he was doing. And I support that 100% of where he's going. He's going to have funds. If the school needs money, he's saying he's going to have money in that account to help the school. Remember, if you go to 4%, you now hit a maintenance of effort concern for the subsequent year.
Mr. Wilbur, I did say that let's put it in contingency, just targeted, which will not hit maintenance of effort unless we take it.
Mr. Zelinski.
Thank you, Mr. President. Wow, this is complicated. So, you know, I've always been aware of the maintenance of effort. So, we had testimony that we're going to have one child per bench seat in the bus. Roughly can be $250,000 to provide busing to students. We're not sure about spring sports. So let's take the easy one first, if I may. $100,000 possible for spring sports. Maybe yes, maybe no. What month would we know if we needed, if spring sports were going to be allowed because of COVID? Do we know, school committee chair?
Well, I mean, we would know by September anyway.
Oh, so
August. Superintendent, you want to give me a number, or give me a time?
I would say that would be around March. I know they are also looking at changing the sports schedule around, you know, possibly moving baseball into the autumn. So there are a number of other pieces in works, but nothing has been set as being definite.
Holistically, you know, we have to think of the band kids, the advanced, I'm not even going to go there. We have to think of everybody. But if we knew spring sports, I was thinking February, March. Okay, February. If we were to take $100,000 and put it into a contingency for sports in the spring, by the end of February or March, we don't know, that money gets reappropriated maybe to road repair, maybe to some type of other equipment. Then we wouldn't have to worry about the maintenance of effort. Am I correct so far, Mr. Igliozzi? So far, am I correct? And okay.
Yes.
So if we were to put that $100,000 into a contingency somewhere, and we would know by a drop dead date of March that let's hope they have sports. I mean, sports got me through high school. Let's hope that there are sports for our students. If we put that into contingency and we took money and put it into a contingency for busing because we have no idea what's going to happen there, we would be avoiding maintenance of effort. Now, if we pull the trigger and release that money for busing, I'm wondering, I'm not clairvoyant, is it possible for the state to say, you did this and it's not a maintenance of effort? Because in a second, I would do this without maintenance of effort. But the safeguard would be we'd have a timeline up until March to know if there was going to be sports. Busing starts in September. Paul, if you could recognize Mr. Igliozzi. Mr. Chair, can you recognize Mr. Igliozzi?
David's there.
Yes, Mr. Vice President, to the extent that you put money in contingency, regardless of what you say is the targeted purpose, until it's transferred to the school department, it will not affect maintenance of effort.
Right.
You have that flexibility. So that you absolutely do. But obviously, once you once it's transferred to the school department, unless they provide some other relief at the state level, it will be a maintenance of effort from that year forward.
Yes.
Ogier.
I just want to make sure that I'm understanding Gary's new proposal, which the budget committee has agreed with. So the contingency is kind of just like a school appropriation contingency. It's just a blanket, or is it line itemed out specific to an individual? Or is it just in general contingency and then we can draw upon it from there?
If I may, Mr. President.
Mr. Uzowski.
Yes, it is a general contingency with established with the intention to do all we can to replace a shortcoming in state aid to education. That's why it's being created. If the state aid to education is not what it might be, or becomes what it might have been in what it was proposed to be in January, then that contingency fund can be used to replace and to restore the funding for every one of the items that were in the budget. Or, frankly, it's a council decision. That is the prerogative that is given only to the council as to how it gets spent. And I think it should be kept that way. I don't think that you should be making allocations now on any portion of that contingency because we just don't know where things are going to unfold. This is going to be a very difficult year in the town of North Smithfield. It's going to be a very difficult year in the school department. We're doing all we can to try to make sure that we can do what we can for our school department. I don't know how else to express it. So yes, Councilman Osier, it is whatever of the amounts that have been cut that I recommended to be cut for the purpose of establishing increasing the fund balance contingency line is there for the discretion of the council on July 2nd, on August 2nd, on May 2nd of the 2021 fiscal year to make a decision as to how it gets used.
Thanks, Gary. There's a lot of stuff going around. I just wanted to make sure I was following clearly.
And I appreciate the question.
But when we made all of these potential cuts through the budget for a reason, to address the potential reduction in state aid that's anticipated, because that's the last we've heard, 25% cut in state aid, $1.5 million. We've been making all of these cuts to move it over there to try to ease the pain as we set this budget. Should it come to fruition, we can come in and help out. Understand one thing though right now. The spending plan that we started with yesterday, before we made those cuts, it's 3.7% of the levy. The levy can only go up 4%. It's only about $108,000 to $112,000 that we're, lack of a better term, we're leaving on the table. We could go to the full 4% levy increase. It's only about $100,000 or a little bit more than that. It's not like we're sitting on $300,000, $400,000, $500,000 that we haven't, that we're not looking to increase the levy by. The tax rate, the amount the tax rate goes up is different than the levy. The levy can only go up 4%. We're at 3.7. There's only about 100 and change in funds if we wanted to go to the full 4% levy increase. We need to understand that. Spending plan that's been adopted is that close to being at the limit. We don't have another $365,000 that we can add to this budget. We don't have it unless we cut it from somewhere else. That's the reality of the numbers. And we made all of these cuts with one assumption: state aid was going to be cut. That was the assumption that we're operating under. Because it's the biggest unknown that we have. That's $6 million of money that we don't know what's going to happen out of our total budget of what, 47 million or 47, just the 47 million. 6 million of that comes from the state, which goes back to my comment that I made earlier. Imagine if 80% of that 47 came from the state and we were sitting saying, what are you going to do?
This is a
We're
piece of,
kind of lucky in that regards. We're a little bit lucky in that regards to look at it that way, but the reality of it is we're pushing that 4% levy anyways. We don't have an additional 350,000. We only have maybe 100,000 or a little bit more. That's the reality of the numbers. The spending plan that's been presented to us is pushing the maximum levy. It's not pushing the tax increase is 2 point something percent because we've had new growth in the town, but the levy can only be 4%, and we're pushing it. We pushed it right to 4% last year. We pushed it right to the level, full amount last year, 4%. That's the reality of it. Those are the numbers. Mr. Yuzowski?
may I?
Yep.
With the allocations and decisions made thus far, there's opportunity to have a reserve of about $800,000 if the 100,000 that's already in the contingency line as budgeted, it would be on the order of $900,000. I had indicated to you when I outlined this when we first got to the contingency discussion that I had targeted $1 million in cuts to accomplish that kind of a reserve. Frankly, I don't know, last night or early this morning, I realized that, I had accomplished $815,000 in cuts on the town side of the budget between the capital and budget items. I had also included a $185,000 reduction in the school department allocation. I don't know why it didn't hit me before this, but the reality is cutting the school department budget to have school department money available doesn't make a lot of sense at this point. So I mentioned that only because what we're looking at is about $800,000 in terms of revenue or resource that we've potentially have available as a contingency. If the full amount of this potential 25% cut in aid is on the table, we're looking at $1.5 million. We haven't touched the other 700,000. There's still unknowns in here that could hit us in the back of the head that will require even further activities that we've looked at. I've looked at some numbers. I mean, what is happening in other parts of the state is that the collective bargaining groups are being asked to defer their raises for a year. In the school side, that's over $400,000. On our side, it's something over 100. That may be what has to happen if we wound up in the we'd have to be completely successful in negotiating those circumstances to be able to get close to another $700,000. So, that's why I said earlier, $20,000, every dollar means something here. And I'm going to continue to advocate that every dollar that you've cut from the budget so far be held in the fund balance restoration / contingency line to be controlled by the council as it determines best as this year unfolds. And hopefully we will get through the biggest part of any question mark in the next 6 weeks. If that doesn't happen,
we have to, because that's when we have to finalize all of our stuff.
right, we've got to send out bills. But and we've talked about this. I don't know if it's in the meetings, but the other alternative is that we see what happens and we wind up in the unenviable circumstance. Many communities have talked about this, is a supplemental tax. This community's been through that before. Those of us that remember it, I'm sure, are going to say, we don't want to do that. That's not.
No, we do not.
Part of.
So, Mr. Vadney,
Yes.
Chair, I just want to make sure, and Finance Director DeJesus, so if we went another $108,000, we'd be at the 4% max. Is that correct?
Correct.
You know what? I think the number one investment we make are to our kids. I mean, there's just no question in my mind. We've got to do this somehow. We've got to come up with $250,000 held in a contingency account. so that if we need it, we draw down on it. $100,000 for sports. We've got, at this moment, I heard conflicting numbers, $815,000, $315 from capital, $500 from operating. Where can we get it to at least $1 million? And that's not what we need to be. We need more than that. I got to tell you, if we can't bus our kids in, you know, I heard folks saying the other night that, you know, a lot of our kids get driven in by their parents. They take a neighbor or two, or some high school kid drives in. Suppose that the parent that can't drive that day. Suppose the high school neighborhood kid with a car can't take it. Busing is going to get very complicated. It's just not going to be one child in every row. We're going to have backup busing to get these kids to school. Because just because someone can't drive them doesn't mean 2 or 3 kids miss school that day if they're dependent. So I'm going to be a firm supporter that we have money in there for busing. Sports, do we need? I said it earlier. Sports kept me in high school as a kid. That was my fun time. That was my social, you know. But somehow we've got to come up and guarantee busing so that school department knows that, because they're trying to create their budget as well. And then we have the sticky wicket here of we don't want to get into maintenance of effort. It's not easy. And every year they say it's not easy. I have to tell you, it's my 16th year. This is you can add them all together. They've never come up to this challenge. This is tough. It's a tough one. I'm going to support somehow that we get that money into a contingency for the school department to utilize, but we need triggering dates, and we should have dates in it. If not, it goes back into, and the sad part is we have to raise the levy to get this money. We can't refund it to the taxpayers. And that's the sad part, but we have to take appropriate action. If the last figure we have, the state is going to they're going to defund by 25%. We have to step up and take care of our kids. It's that simple. I don't know how we're going to do it, but hopefully collectively we can get this to happen.
Mr. President, if we follow the program that I've tried to outline here, and there is need for busing money, it will be the council's prerogative to use any portion of that $800,000 or $900,000 that is sitting there for that purpose.
Yes.
That's,
and if not, it goes, I'm sorry, Administrator, I'm speaking.
That's it. It's, I mean, you know, labeling it at this point, before you know what when you label it, you're going to be committing to spending it. That's a bad plan, right?
That's absolutely not true.
That is my position, sir. And you know, I could
It's in
take
a
this and say, I
contingency
want,
Mr. Lombardi,
Mr. President,
Sorry, Mr. President.
if I want the $175,000 for a truck, if we put it into the budget and I buy it tomorrow, then it's not there anymore. I'm saying I want to put it aside with the chance that it may not be there, but that it could be there. And if we label it now, we're spending it. And I will resist that, you know, every minute of this meeting.
Okay.
The contingency is there as a fallback to this entire process. And that's it.
All right, Mr. President, I'll put it flat on the table. We need 4%, or we're gonna have to cut a math interventionist, an ELL person. I'm saying if we don't need to do that, we won't even ask you for the money. But you can't put it in a general account and not trigger it automatically, because then we can't do our budget. We'll need to cut $650,000 from our budget tomorrow. And that will eliminate a whole bunch of stuff. Now, if the state cuts us, I have no problem going back to the union and asking them to reopen the contract. And I know that's not going to go over well. We probably have 60 people from the school department here. But the town already passed that contract, and then we have to pay for it now. So it's not that we got to go back to the contract. I mean, the unions, based on the state cut, it's based on our cut.
we're not asking you to do that. We didn't ask you to do that.
I'm telling you that I may have to. I got to cut 600 and change out of the budget.
Well, where are you getting 600 out of the budget from? What you were requesting to what was being offered is $365,000.
In the state.
What do you
300.
mean in the state? From what you requested of the town is $365,000 difference.
Is Lisa on the call?
I can't control the state. We're trying to help you in case the state does. That's what this whole effort is toward, is to get to the point that if the state doesn't come through, if the federal government doesn't come through, the reality of it is if the state doesn't give you the $1 million, it's still the town that's holding the bag. That's the reality of it. There's no getting around that. It's not on your shoulders completely. It's on everyone's shoulders. And the whole thing, the whole $1 million needs to come from somewhere. So when we come in with a bottom line number, that's what we have to live with. And yeah, we're taking the gamble. The town's taking the gamble as much as the school department's taking the gamble that the state is going to make us whole. And I'm not really confident of that right now.
But whether you give us $350,000 now and $600,000 later, or $1 million later, it prevents us from cutting our budget, which into the bone. I mean, we're not going to be able to rehire. We're going to lose teachers. Our morale's going to go down the tubes. I'm just telling you. So that's my argument. It's up to the council.
Mr. St. Jean, there's a lot of faces on my screen. If I don't see you, give me a minute.
I just want to clarify what Mr. Lombardi was saying. The budget that we created back in December supposed a increase in state aid to education. That was what the state was projecting at that time. And since then, the world changed. And rather than the increase in state aid to education that we were supposed to get for FY21, they've level funded us right now. So we had to take a $300,000 decrease in what we had anticipated state aid to education would be for FY21. And on top of the 2.2% appropriation, that brings us up to about $650,000 we need to cut, from the budget that we had originally submitted. Now, we do have word, and and believe me, thank you for working out the contingency and worst case scenarios, that yes, right now the state is starting us in FY21 level funded as FY20, not at the increased rate that they had originally projected for us. However, we are anticipating anywhere between a minimum of a 5% reduction to a 25% reduction once the General Assembly passes its budget and sees where the Fed stands with stimulus and where the Department of Ed sees with how else they're going to redistribute CARES Act money. So when Mr. Lombardi is talking about $655,000, that is the reduction from 4% to 2.2 minus the reduction that we had thought we were going to have for state aid to education at the time of the budget.
The papers that I have in front of me don't show that. We had a budget request from the school department of $27,513,326 with recommended numbers of $27,148,721.
Right, because the original state aid to education was $300,000 higher.
It's showing that number. It's showing an increase of 290,000 in the state aid.
Right.
May I?
But that's been taken away. Yeah, I'm sorry, go, Lisa.
So I think what Mr. President is saying, that whatever they vote in tonight as the bottom line for the school department, that will be our budget. If the state aid falls short, the contingency will kick in. Is that correct?
Yes.
Yes.
We hope it can.
So you are not going to vote in the lower state aid amount. Our total budget will retain that state aid amount that was requested.
But there was a reported 5.
We were approving the town's appropriation that was recommended by the budget committee. And then we would have done a bottom line number, which on our page, they're all in pink or salmon, whatever color you want to call it, which are state numbers. It's the state aid, it's Medicaid, it's rental income, it's CT tuitions, tuition group home, high cost special ed, all of those factors are the rest of your budget. And we didn't touch those numbers.
Okay.
May I say something? I haven't received anything from RIDE or any school departments saying that they were taking away the 290. Did Lisa receive something that I don't have a copy of?
No, we haven't been, nothing has been confirmed.
Right, so nothing's in writing that this, as far as we know, the RIDE document that I get from the RIDE website is the numbers that we have in the budget
Correct.
right now.
That was the governor's
So-
proposed
Okay,
budget.
so the 290 that you all saying that's going to be reduced has not even been decided yet, so.
The only thing that we know is that they haven't approved a budget and they told us that we could operate. We would need to operate July in August.
Receiving the same amount, but that also happened 2 years ago when they didn't approve the budget, where you all received the same amount as the previous year for the first 2 months, but then the state caught up, correct?
Correct.
Okay.
In this case, though, we really don't.
And I know
if
you and
we'll
I've
catch
been,
up or what's gonna happen.
talking, we've been sharing information. I wanted to make sure I wasn't missing anything.
Right. Nothing's been confirmed.
Okay, thank you.
So can I ask a point of clarification? I'm sorry, Mr. Administrator, your hand was up before mine. Paul,
No, go ahead, Mrs. Zelinski.
So I've heard some different, I've heard that the state is going to level fund as they did in 2020, which is going to be stated at $5,716,299. I'm going to round that up to $300. And yet we were anticipating a $290,600 increase. What is it? Now, we also heard that today it's either going to be a 5 to a 25% decrease. Are we going to be level funded? Are we going to be decreased? I know no one has the answer here. Mr. St. Jean, I mean, you just recently said today that it was going to be decreased 5 to 25%. And yet I'm hearing that we were going to get level funded. So does somebody have a definitive where we are with the state with RIDE?
So
You gotta take the magic 8 ball and spin it and see what comes.
Yeah,
That's about
are-
where we're at right now. I'm
you
gonna
are
be honest, you know,
repeating-
it's kind of a flippant remark, but in all seriousness, we don't know. We're all taking this huge leap of faith trying to do this budget with a million unknowns out there to try to make it work. And that's the reality of this thing, is that we're in a position that none of us know where we're gonna be next week, never mind in 3 months. And we're trying to do this, and we're trying to do this so that we're protected, so that should we need funds, we can send it to the school department if the state aid doesn't come through. If the state aid comes through, we may be able to buy the truck. We may be able to pave more roads. We don't know that. We're trying to come up with some plan, a spending plan with more unknowns than like you said, Mrs. Zelinski, than we've seen in a million years. And nobody knows the answer. Is it going to be one kid per seat on the bus? I bet my life on it. That's not going to happen, because it's not even realistic.
Not enough buses.
You're going to get back to a point that people are going to need to stop and get some common sense. And you know what? The kids will ride the bus with a mask on, and they'll be able to sit next to each other just like the rest of the world is doing right now. There's going to be some inconveniences. Yep, we know that. But the reality of it is what's been put out there in early June isn't what we're going to see in September. I'm almost going to guarantee that. But the reality of it is, yeah, we don't know. I know Mrs. Marcotte with her numbers. I've dealt with her for 15 years, and so I know what she's facing and what she gets. And when they get information, they share it with the finance department in the town. They always have. So we get the best numbers that we do. The reality of it is a state legislature doesn't know where they're going with this. And so they're putting it out there, and then you hear, well, we're going to do this, and then we're going to do this. And so Mr. St. Jean probably gets as many emails from the RIDE budget as we do from the governor on the COVID, as she keeps changing her executive orders, And so right now we're chasing our tail almost, trying to come up with the best solution to an answer that we don't know, or a problem that we don't know. And so we're trying to work through this and come up with something that we hope can work on July 1st that can be changed in August, hopefully. That will
I
have
hope
that
so.
information
Because
and
my,
go forward with it.
one of my big concerns here is if interventionist has to be furloughed, laid off, math specialists, these students, these children are going to be so far behind. And can we bring them back to get caught up? How much is that going to cost? It's just a huge quagmire. We gotta do the best we can to get our kids educated in a great environment.
I
So,
see, Gary, hold on a minute.
contingency, yeah, let's do it. Let's get that contingency up there. Hopefully we don't need it. But again, I just want to voice that gets passed on in the levy.
Mr.
So-
Ogier,
Unless I completely misunderstood Gary and the rest of this conversation, I'm all for funding the schools, but this is also a very unique situation. You know, the money that is in the contingency is going to be earmarked specifically for us to utilize towards school department, unless I'm mistaken that correctly. Am I wrong on that, Gary?
I think
Yes, you are.
I think you're overstating
wrong.
it if I can, Gary, but we're putting it in contingency in case we need to go to the school department without saying it's going to the school department. Because if the school department doesn't need it all, we can get a truck, we can pave roads. It's,
Right.
It's group funded without saying, we as a council know what we cut to get to that point, with the whole goal of saying, if state aid is reduced the way we think it's going to be, we can come in and fill it. If it's bigger than what we think, then yeah, we all have a problem. If it comes in, even if it's level funded, then we know that we're 300 or 290
90,000.
short, right? That we can, if we want to, we can move. If the school gets to or April or whatever, and they're saying, hey, we're running short, you know, these are the reasons, council can move it to there. But we still have other monies that we can go back and say, okay, let's buy that dump truck. Let's pave 2 more streets. You know what I mean?
Yeah, no,
And so
yeah, I guess
we can't set a spending plan for it because we don't know where we're gonna need it yet. That's the,
Right.
we're putting it, it's completely in reserve, just like most of us do in our houses. We put money in the bank. We don't know what we're gonna use it for. We got a roof leak. I was gonna buy a car, but now the roof of my house is more important. That's the kind of things that we're gonna deal with, that we have money in the bank, but we're not sure where we're gonna end up needing to spend it. We don't know that yet.
right. I guess that's what I meant. We want to help the schools, but it also helps the town protect itself in the event that the numbers come back and they're more in line with the budget, or what. It allows the town more flexibility on the back end, which I agree. It's a tough line to walk. You know, if we could, I think we'd all say, like, yeah, you know, let's do 4%. But this is probably the toughest part of the budget that we're going to have to discuss. And you know, I agree. I don't know. I originally said earmarking, you know, and contingencies for spring sports and stuff like that. But I also agree at the same time that handicaps the town and puts the town in a bad situation. If, you know, it's tough. You know, it's a tough conversation.
Mr. Izowski, I see you, Mr. Lombardi.
I may be able
I
to
want to make
answer.
sure.
No, I'm recognizing that Mr. Izowski first.
Ms. Marcotte asked a question before that I think is important to make sure we understand. What we're trying to do is everything we possibly can to be ready for a cut in state aid. That $6 million number that's shown in the second line is something we don't know what it's actually going to be. And so, you know, I guess, you know, from your question, you know, if we go forward with this and the total budget is as indicated at 27,148, 721, and every penny of that is committed tomorrow, I'm not sure the school department and the administration has done the best for the town, but I think we've done as best we possibly can to make sure that we have something to back up any portion of that $6 million that doesn't come through. Recognizing that it might be, the numbers I'm seeing right now, the optimum number right now is about $900,000 that would be in the contingency line. And if we wound up with 1.5 million coming out, the town doesn't have the $600,000 in this budget to be able to turn over to the school department and make that 27,148,000 true. Is that where you were going, Ms. Marcotte? Was that it?
Yes.
I mean, even if we do this, we're still going to have open questions. And that's why, to get back to your point, Mr. Osier, we're in a circumstance where, we have to keep it as flexible as possible, because we don't know what's coming next in this. And we won't know for a matter of weeks, potentially, based on what Senator Reid and Senator Whitehouse, Congressman Cicilline and Langevin have all said to the league. It looks like it'll be sometime in August before they make their decision. So I'm going to be holding off as much as I can, even though I'll be, moving forward to pay our personnel as we've committed in this budget. But I'll also be looking forward to try to hold off on any spending that we don't absolutely have to do in July or August. And I would hope that's going to be the same thing on the school side, so that we each do our part to manage this thing as effectively and as smartly as we possibly can to help get you through this, get us all through this.
Mr. Lombardi?
Mr. President, let me dovetail off the administrator's comments. If the town is saying that if the $6 million doesn't come in and it's 5,700,000, and that the contingency is going to be making up for that, then I think we're all on the same page. Because instead of having the $650,000 loss that we're expecting, we're only looking at a $350,000 loss, and that's something that we can handle. So if the $6 million, I don't want to say it's guaranteed by the town, but if that number comes in slightly less and you're not going to pass that on to the schools, then we're on the same page.
I think hearing that statement, I think that we're on the same page. That's the whole focus of this, is that we're trying to reserve money to make sure that you're whole for the budget committee is recommending. And you know as well as I do, Mr. Lombardi, the law. You know what? They dump $1 trillion of stimulus money, and for whatever reason, the state says, you know what, we're going to be real generous to the schools because we know they got extra costs, and it goes up to $6.5 million. That's yours. I can't touch it. That's a pass-through. Goes from the town to the school department. I don't get to touch it. That's a full throw-through right to you guys.
We'll invite you to the party.
We're trying to make sure that we can get you as close to that $6 million as we're able to. Unless we get that worst case scenario that it's $1.5 million, I don't know how we make that one up. But that's the whole point of this, is that we're trying to give you what was recommended, because I think you heard, I can't give you the full 4%. I don't have it in the levy. It's just not there. So we're trying to give you everything that we can, and to be fair, and we're trying to put a reserve in our budget by making cuts throughout the budget to try to help to make sure that that state aid number is held whole. I'm glad that we're all getting on the same page here.
Right.
And the ironic thing is, all of this is right now, the motion that's on the floor is for reconsideration. All of this discussion is on that motion to reconsider. I haven't lost sight of that.
Right.
But
so, Mr. President, technically, if you're guaranteeing that extra $300,000, you're pretty close to 4%, at least on the guarantee side. So we're at the same number.
So everything is copacetic.
Here he goes again. Wait a minute.
We're at 27,148,721 if the motion holds and doesn't get
reconsidered.
That's what the bottom line is.
Mr. President, clearly, and thank you, Mr. Chairman, for recognizing that, we're trying to make sure that we have everything we possibly can available to offset a tragedy on the state aid side. That's really all this is. And yet, I still have hope that I'll be able to buy a new dump truck or provide $25,000 to the schoolhouse for restoration that might get us other aid, a grant. We're pulling every plug we possibly can without just stopping everything to make sure that we're in the best position and hoping that the worst doesn't hit. That's all. I have to, as far as the council is concerned, you already made this decision to accept the budget committee's recommendation, which happens to be mine as well. I hope you'll stay with that and not reconsider this motion.
And just to my colleagues, just that motion is what's out there. There's a second we run the discussion, but through all of the discussion, is everybody clear now where we sit on this and why we've got to this point, what we've done to get to this point and where we sit? Everybody clear with that now?
So we're roughly about 815,000 in contingency. Is that correct? Is that there was a $20 swing?
It's about 930.
12,000.
It's about 930, Mr. Zelinski.
2030, okay.
Yes, I agree with that.
Okay, one more time, you broke up. What is the exact amount?
It's about 930.
930, okay.
930,000.
All right, so I want to pose this question to the chairperson of the school committee. Mr. Chairman, you've heard that by now, you've seen his anguish over this. We certainly want to make sure that the students have every opportunity. Nobody gets cut, no math specialist intervention. All this would happen, but on your side, should things hit the fan that shouldn't hit the fan, your school committee and school department are ready to make some cuts as well. We have money in contingency to make sure that these things don't happen. Are you comfortable with that, Mr. Lombardi?
So, Councilman, yes. So at this point, if the guarantee, if the bottom line stays the same, and the state cuts us 300,000 and the town makes up for that, then we're on the same page. We're exactly where we need to be. So yes, I appreciate that, and thank you very much.
That would be a happy day if that happened. I mean,
happy night.
For all of this, it would be a happy day if that happened.
Mr. President, there's a motion. Where are we at?
Wait, let me finish now, okay? Any more discussion? Okay, there's a motion on the floor to reconsider the motion to approve the town appropriation to the school department of $20,701,519, and it's been seconded. If you vote to reconsider it, you vote yes. If you don't want to reconsider it, you vote no. At which point, the original motion will stay. Okay? Roll call.
For no vote, it will stay.
Correct.
It'll stay at $20,701,519.
Correct.
Wait,
Yes.
Roll call vote,
hold on.
Madam Clerk.
Hold it. Can you just repeat that? I'm sorry. My voice, it keeps going in and out on mine.
There's a motion to reconsider.
Yeah.
The original motion to approve $20,701,519.
Yeah.
We're going to be calling the vote. A yes vote means we reconsider it. A no vote means we accept that number,
Okay,
which would lead us to the next step of approving the bottom line number.
okay.
So, any other questions? Roll call vote, please.
Mrs. Barnamoli?
No.
Mrs. O'Hara?
No.
Mr. Rozier?
No.
Mr. Zelinski?
No.
Mr. Vadney,
No. We're making progress here, folks. Now for the school department, I'll entertain a motion to approve a grand total of $27,148,721. Is there a motion to approve?
So moved, Mr. President.
Zelinski, seconded by Mrs. Barnamoli. Any other discussion? Hearing none, roll call vote.
Mrs. Barnamoli?
Yes.
Mrs. O'Hara?
Yes.
Mr. Rozier?
Yes.
Mr. Zelinski?
Yes.
Mr. Vadeney?
Yes.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
God bless America.
Next is grants and contributions in the amount of
Land that
21.
I love, stand beside.
Next is grants and contributions in the amount of $21,826. There a motion to approve grants and contributions in the amount of $21,826.
So moved, Mr. President.
Motion by Mr. Zelinski. Is there a second?
Second.
Second by Mr. Ogier. I have a couple questions on this. VFW holidays, we zeroed them out. Is it a reason for that?
They haven't notified us or asked for any of the donations in the last couple of years, Mr. President.
Was that put in there to pay for the parade or anything like that?
No, no, that was a donation. They would just send me a letter asking for donations
Okay.
and I would send them a check.
Okay,
Well, if I can add to
Go
that,
ahead.
there were expenses related to the parade
Yeah.
that were being paid by the VFW with cooperation with the school department. Some of that has gone away, and they haven't asked. So I think especially this year, it's certainly no disrespect to our veterans, but
yeah.
you know,
I just wanted to make sure that it wasn't, that we weren't cutting because,
Yeah.
if they're not, I've heard it before, previous councils, where if these groups weren't asking, they weren't given a grant. They needed to send a letter in.
Right.
And so, okay,
Yeah, we request a letter from all participants and we haven't received a letter in the last couple of years.
the food pantry is going up to 5,200 from 200.
That came from again, they didn't ask for it this year either, but that was a recommendation from the budget committee
I mean, I know the food bank is getting more visitors than the
because of the COVID, yes, and the
COVID and stuff
unemployment
like-
rate.
I understand that,
Mhm.
but is that something that we normally would fund? I thought that worked off of donations in the,
It works off donations and they'll ask us for $200 a year and we usually just give it to them. This year, they did not ask for any funds as of right now.
okay.
Mr. President, I'm a member of the board at the food pantry. And they stayed out of this discussion, but given where we are in this budget circumstance, I would venture to say that if I asked my fellow colleagues on the board at the food pantry if the money was more important to stay in the town account, meaning to eliminate this allocation, I think they'd probably agree.
I'm not looking to cut it, I'm just looking for clarification on it.
Well, I'm going as far as saying you could eliminate that $5,000 addition. And, I didn't have this discussion with the budget committee. I feel like, I'm my obligation's here. And we are helping the food pantry at every possible opportunity. At this point, I don't think that, that $5,000 needs to go to the food pantry.
And the last question was North Smithfield Heritage Association, we increased it. Is that an increase to cover their sewer and water expenses like we discussed earlier in the year?
Cynthia?
What's the question? I forgot.
North Smithfield Heritage Association, we increased it
Mhm.
by 2,500. Was that to cover the water and sewer expenses they had requested of us earlier?
No, I'll tell you right now. Hold on one second. We have a reason why they increased it.
New service contract for the furnaces.
New service contract for the furnaces.
Connect Heritage Hall to the Fire Department Central Alarm System.
Connect Heritage Hall to the fire department.
Central.
Central.
System.
What is it?
Central
Fire alarm.
system.
Fire system,
Oh,
yes,
for the fire alarm?
yes.
So that increase isn't for their water and sewer expenses?
Oh, is it? No, it doesn't say it in the letter.
No? They had requested that, didn't they? They were looking for us to,
They were looking for us to just,
they actually want us to waive the fees, but we
To
can't
waive
waive
the
the
fee.
fees because they're enterprise accounts.
correct. And they did not ask for that from that, no.
Do we know what, the number was only like $1,800, I believe.
The sewer is only 500 and something, and the water's just based on usage, so it shouldn't be that much. I don't remember what the water is.
Do we want to move some out of the food pantry into that account? To cover them?
I'm a little concerned. I know the administrator knows more about the food pantry than I do, but man, I can't see our residents being hungry because, Gary, how are the food stocks? Is there enough? Do people come in and walk away with food to feed their families to help them out?
Let me put it this way. If I felt that the food pantry was in need of additional revenues, I'd be sitting here telling you that straight up. I just will simply leave it at, I think the food pantry is able to do its job this year with the resources that it has. It needs more volunteers more than it needs more money.
Thank you. Hey, Cynthia, in regards, it just hit me in regards to the water. I think it's like $7.70 per 1,000 gallons.
Yes, it is.
Not a lot.
No.
No.
And the sewer is 500 and change for the year.
Yeah. You're right. It's
Mhm.
500.
Let me also add,
$528. I'm rounding up a penny.
I need to add that one of the things that, the food pantry has been very, very blessed to be able to be supported by some very strong donations. And, I would hope that the message that I deliver doesn't indicate that it doesn't need the money. It does need money. It needs a continuing revenue stream that we can help with from time to time. I just think that at this point this year, knowing what I know about both circumstances, I think we have greater needs right now for every dollar that we have here than the current circumstance of the food pantry. The food pantry will always depend on a mountain of donations, including ours. It's just, this year is different.
Paul, you made the motion, correct?
I did.
Who was the second?
I'll second it.
No, we already had a second.
Oh, I didn't hear it, sorry.
Oh, it's my finger.
Oh, I couldn't see you, Clay. You're in the dark.
Who made the
Wave your
second on
arm.
that?
Did I?
I didn't hear it.
I'm going off. I'm not getting up. Trust
I
me.
have the original motion made by Mr. Zelinski, seconded by Mr. Ogier.
Okay,
I do have a question.
okay, go ahead.
We have in here the Pumpkin Fest services. Is that still going to happen, the Pumpkin Fest?
Last time I
was gonna
talked
say that too.
to Elizabeth, she still had it on hold. She's not 100% sure, to be honest.
She's asked me the past couple of weeks, and I've been
Yeah.
watching the phase 3 reopening
Yeah.
circumstances.
We're waiting.
If if depending on how long phase 3 continues, it would not be able to run based on the phase 3 circumstance. It will be dependent upon phase 4 for outside groups of the magnitude that we have. So we're still in a circumstance of we don't know. I would encourage that we keep that allotment for the Pumpkin Fest and hope for the best. I don't know. It may be that they can delay. It's going to be a tough call.
Okay, thank you.
Does the main maker and second want to amend their motion to reduce the food pantry amount?
I will, as long as we're going to go back to level funding them $200. Is that fair, Gary? What do you think? And Gmail, I see you nodding your head there. You're muted. Okay. I can't hear you. All right. All right, so I will amend my motion to decrease it by $5,000.
And those
Always
second,
encourage that we provide support to them and show our recognition. I value that. Thank you.
Okay.
does the second amend their motion?
I amend it.
Okay. So the main and second have amended their motion to reduce grants and contributions by $5,000, which would leave $16,826. Any other discussion? Roll call vote.
Mrs. Barnamoli?
Yes.
Mrs. O'Hara?
Yes.
Mr. Rozier?
Yes.
Mr. Zelinski?
Yes.
Mr. Vadney,
Yes. Page 13, unbudgeted expense, 0, no action necessary, which leads us to total general fund expenditures. Cynthia, can you give us a new number?
Am I zeroing out contingency to give you the new number?
Oh, that's true. We need to go back. Thank
Yes.
you. We need to go back to the contingency account. That's right. And that is on page
6.
Page 6.
I gotta ask her because you weren't paying attention.
So Cynthia, what is the total amount of the reductions that we've made
So
in
far,
line items?
you want me to go by every line item or you want me to tell you just the total?
Well, you can give us each total, each one that we cut, and then give us a grand total.
Let's go to the top. And then
First part is the highway.
highway,
4211.
4211.
4311.
So Department 4311 was highway, a reduction of 370,000.
Mm-hmm.
The next one was OPEB, a reduction of 150,000.
Mm-hmm.
No, we have capital.
Oh, sorry.
Okay. Capital, 315,000.
Yep.
Food pantry, 5,000.
Yep, out of grants.
Yep. So I have a total of 840,000.
840,000.
Mhm.
Okay, so we made reductions of 840,000. And we left it, because we didn't take any action on it. There's currently 100,000 in that line item, fund balance restoration contingency. And so obviously all the discussion we had was all of those reductions that we made go into that line item.
4191.
Remind me where our consideration for providing trash pickups going to come into play, Mr. President.
We can add that into there at this time. We would have to add more money. We would have to add more money to that.
Mm-hmm. So I would, once again, like to make a motion that we approve $21,000 to provide trash pickup for the residents at, I see the town clerk has a hand up.
I just want to make sure I'm consistent with these. Do we not have to approve the 122.5 and then amend it? Or is that not the same because it's a?
No, we do.
Okay.
We do. I'm just trying to get what I need to go into there.
Okay, because he's making a motion to add, so I was a little confused. I just want to clarify. So I had it right.
He wants to add something, but we haven't got to the main motion yet.
Right, so I was, okay.
So you want to make a motion, Mrs. Zelinski, to add $21,201
Yeah, as we were having discussion, it also dawned on me, we may have had higher tipping fees for the past 4 months because a lot of folks are home with COVID and they're generating more trash than normal. So, yeah, I'm going to make that motion that we approve 21K for High Rocks for trash services.
21,201.
21,201.
That's what
Yes,
the
thank you, Mr. President.
proposal, that's what the proposal is for. And is there a second on that?
I'll second it for
Second
discussion.
by Mr. Ogier. Under discussion, is that something that we should put into a restricted line item so we know where it's going? Do we actually spell out contingency trash removal at High Rocks? Do we actually identify it that way?
I would identify it that way.
Could we just do contingency trash removal?
Well, we know what it's going for. So if we're going to put in contingency and we know what it is, we need to identify it. Am I correct, Mr. Igliozzi?
Mr. President, you have every right to either identify a contingency item by specification or include it generally, as you have with the first 840,000. It's totally up to the council, because you could still change that trash contingency anytime before you disperse it.
Okay. I just thought that because we knew what it was for, we needed to identify it. The 840, we don't know what it's for. We don't know where that's going. That's completely.
That's true. Yes.
Mr. President, I would just raise that amount coming out of another cut.
No, it's an additional amount of money.
Okay.
It's an addition to the budget.
Okay. I understand. Then I understand then I think you should, for that, you're going to be technically increasing the levy.
Okay.
So I think you should probably do that then.
That's what I wanted to
Identify
clarify.
it, Mr. Igliozzi.
Yeah, I would recommend that you create the trash or the High Rocks trash contingency item as a line item, because this is new, going to increase the revenue side, which will increase the levy, is what I'm gathering from my comment with the president. Is that correct, Mr. President?
Yes, it's additional money. It's not, we didn't take it from somewhere else. We're adding 21,000 to our budget. So that's why I said we needed to identify it.
I recommend that. I strongly recommend that.
Mrs. Zelinski?
So are we all set? We're going to recognize it as High Rocks Trash Services.
Yep.
What do you want the line to exactly say? So, because I have to create a whole new account number.
Okay.
It will be
High Rocks.
contingency. It will be contingency trash removal at High Rocks.
Thank you.
And the value is going to be 21,201.
Yeah, thank you.
And there's been a motion and a second. Motion by Mrs. Zelinski, second by Mr. Ogier. Any other discussion? Hearing none, roll call vote.
Barnamoli?
No.
Mrs. O'Hara?
No.
Mr. Rozier?
Yes.
Mr. Zelinski?
Yes.
Mr. Vadney?
No.
Was that a no?
No.
Okay, thank you.
Now we look at line item fund balance restoration contingency. Currently has 100,000. We've made 840,000 in cuts in the budget. So we'll make a motion that we increase that number from 100,000 to 940,000. Is there a second?
Second.
Second by Mrs. Barnamoli. And we don't know where we're going to spend that, but we know that we're going to try to work to make the school department whole. That's the one thing that we do know. Whether we get there or not is what's in question. Any other discussion?
Mr. President, would you mind repeating that motion, please? I was papering right there.
The motion is to increase the line item fund balance restoration contingency from 100,000 to 940,000 by adding the 840,000 in cuts that we made previous.
Thank you.
Without identifying, the intent is to make the school department whole. We don't know what that value is, but we're hoping that it will be possible to make the school department whole with the number that we've approved. Any other discussion? Roll call vote.
Mrs. Barnamoli?
Yes.
Mrs. O'Hara?
Yes.
Mr. Ogier?
Yes.
Mr. Zelinski?
Yes.
Mr. Vadeney?
Yes.
Woohoo.
For a motion on the contingency fund, total would be $962,500. Is there a motion to approve the contingency fund?
So moved.
Motion by
Second.
Bonioli, seconded by Mrs. O'Hara and Mrs. Walensky. Any other discussion? Hearing none, roll call vote.
Mrs. Barnamoli?
Yes.
Mrs. O'Hara?
Yes.
Mr. Ogier?
Yes.
Mr. Zelinski?
Yes.
Mr. Vadeney?
Yes. Now we go back. Cynthia, can you give us a new total general fund expenditures that we just approved now?
Yes. It's actually the same amount. It's 46,727,061.
Oh, goodness.
So for total general fund expenditures, is there a motion to approve $46,727,061?
So moved.
Motion by Mrs. Zelinski. Is there a second? Second by Mrs. O'Hara. Any other discussion? Hearing none, roll call vote.
Barnamoli?
Yes.
Mrs. O'Hara?
Yes.
Mr. Ogier?
Yes.
Mr. Zelinski?
I believe he said yes.
Yes.
Oh, thank you, sorry.
Oh,
It keeps cutting out tonight, I apologize.
I don't think I was loud enough. For a change,
Yes.
huh?
It's after 8. What am I gonna say?
Those woods are dark and dreary. Miles and miles to go.
Now we have to approve, the next thing is we have to approve the revenue budget, correct?
Yes.
So I'd look for a motion to approve. We don't have to do this line by line, do we, Mr. Igliozzi?
You do not, Mr. President. You could do it as a total revenue.
Total levy?
Yep.
Thank you.
So I'll look for a motion for approval of the total general fund revenues of $46,727,061.
So moved.
Motion by Mrs. O'Hara, second by Mrs. Walensky.
She's tired.
Mr. President, I would just indicate that obviously referring to
Department.
the document,
Yeah,
not just the line, not just the bottom line, as provided in,
okay. In the handout, fiscal year 2020-21, general fund budget dated 5/12/2020.
right, all the categories and the 3-page document, which you're
Yep.
approving. with,
Date on that, I apologize.
Excuse me?
What was the date of the handout?
5/12/2020.
Thank you.
Mr. President, Mr. Igliozzi, is it 5:31?
Look, hold on.
5:31?
Look, this was in your title, but really it was printed.
Hold on.
before.
Okay.
I don't know why what are you pertaining to? The document dated? What?
Yeah, that's
The
why.
document that I have in front of me, even though we have spending through 5/31/2020, at the bottom of the page is fiscal year 2020 general fund budget dated 5/12/2020.
Correct.
Sheet.
Correct.
That's what I have.
Okay.
That's what
And
we're
the date
referencing.
on the right-hand side says 6/4, right?
Yes.
Okay. Just want to make sure we're on the same one. You got me nervous there for a minute.
So, Mr. President,
Yes,
just to make sure we're covering the bases here. In the report, you have a different date because we have fiscal year as of, when we're looking at what's been run, general fund budget, it was May 31st. So what date do we want to use?
well, Cynthia just showed me. There are two dates at the bottom of the page.
Yeah,
On
6/4.
It's 5/12/2020.
That's the date of the document.
On the right-hand side, it's got a date of 6/4/2020,
That's the print date.
3 of 3.
Right.
Okay, so what
But
date
her
are we
original
doing?
file has that date of fiscal year 2020
12.
and general fund budget 5/12/2020. That's the file that we're using.
Yeah, that's just the name of the file.
Right.
I mean, I rename it after and I put final adopted,
But
so
then,
it's
but
not even
then
gonna
it's
keep.
dated, but then it's dated 6/4, so
The
we've covered,
6/4 is the most important.
we've covered our bases on it. That's the document that we're referencing.
And Mr. President, I was just indicating that.
So there's been a motion and a second.
Hang on, Mr. Igliozzi
Mr.
speaking.
Igliozzi?
Again, I just wanted to make sure, Mr. President, my point was that the council is voting to approve Appendix B, the Town of North Smithfield General Fund Revenue Budget Fiscal Year 2021, 3-page document, Appendix B,
Mhm.
with a
Dated
final,
6/4/2020.
right, with a final total general revenue number in the amount of, as stated by the president.
Yeah,
I just wanted to be clear that we're approving the 3-page document. That's all I'm saying.
okay. You've got all that, Lily, right?
I do.
So there's been a motion and a second, correct?
Yes.
Roll call vote.
Ms. Barnamoli?
Yes.
Mrs. O'Hara?
Yes.
Mr. Rozier?
Yes.
Mrs. Zelinski?
Yes.
Mr. Vadeney?
Yes. That's only half of it.
What?
Next item on the agenda. Discussion by council vote or other action on method of tax collection.
Quick.
That's easy.
Oh, is it?
Are you kidding? In and out.
We're just, I gotta give you the new numbers. So there's, can I put it up on the screen?
Yes,
Okay,
because I have to read that, don't I?
the whole thing? I don't know.
No, he doesn't.
Okay.
Hold on one second.
Well, does the solicitor agree? Does that have to be read, Solicitor Igliozzi?
Did Jesus start it? No.
It does. I know it does.
All of it?
This should be read. This is the levy, Mr. President.
Yes.
This is the levy. And you have to insert the amounts. Yes.
Mhm.
So I'm gonna insert the amounts while I'm just trying to
Okay.
share it. Hold on one
Yep.
second. Let me know when you can see it. Can you
Take
see
your
it?
time, so
I can see it.
I can see it.
Here we go.
Okay.
There it is.
Mr. President,
Yes, Mr.
I
Iglesias.
know that while getting ready, this is while you're on this matter, I don't know if the administrator wants to weigh in on how he wants to execute this document. Or does he want to wait after it's passed?
Tomorrow.
I'm not sure what the administrator wants to do. Why would he? Can you help me a little bit, David? I'm not sure what you're asking.
I thought, Mr. Administrator, you were going to discuss with the council the possibility of exercising your executive authority with regard to when the levy would be imposed and the
Yes.
bill would be sent out. The provisions of your charter, those dates. I thought you were going to have a discussion about that. I just throw that out. Maybe we should wait till after it's passed, but I just wanted you to put that in your mind. I don't want to.
No, thank you for that, because we do need to talk about that as we go forward. But I think let's go with this first step. And, the levy is the levy. It's a matter of when we actually set the roll and then issue the bills. Those are the two things that accomplish, that really make the paper turn into reality. And we have to be careful about those dates. So yes, sir.
Okay, so at this time, I'm going to entertain a motion. Don't move the screen now on me,
I'm
Cynthia.
not going to. Look, my hands are right here.
We move it when I get to the bottom of that paragraph.
Okay.
then.
Okay, I won't move it, I promise.
I'm going to entertain a motion for the method of tax collection. Shall this town council vote as follows, that the finance director be and is hereby authorized to pay each order when approved by the town council, by the school committee, or the director of public aid, as the case may be, that the finance director be and is hereby authorized to apply receipts for the interest on overdue taxes toward the payment of interest on bonds and notes of the town, that the finance director be and is hereby authorized within the consent of the town council to hire such sum or sums of money as may be necessary to carry out the business of the town for the ensuing year, that the finance director be and is hereby authorized to pay the town's debts and interest. It is hereby resolved that the North Smithfield Town Council, in a meeting legally assembled on June 30th, 2020, hereby orders a levy, apportionment, and collection of the tax on the rateable real estate, tangible personal property, and an excise tax on registered motor vehicles and trailers in the sum not less than $35,462,984, nor more than $35,512,984. Said taxes are for ordinary expenses and charges for the payment of interest and indebtedness in whole or in part of said town and for other expenses or purposes authorized by the law. The tax assessor shall assess and apportion said tax on the inhabitants of rateable property of said town as of the 31st day of December AD 2019 at 12 o'clock midnight, Eastern Standard Time or Daylight Savings Time, with exception of new construction as the case may be, according to law, and delivered to and deposited, same in the office of the town administrator, on or before the 30th day of June 2020. Move up a little more now. There's more.
Oh, no.
Town administrator, on receipt of said assessment, shall forthwith make a copy of same and deliver it to the finance director, who shall forthwith issue and affix to said copy a warrant under his, her, hand directed to the collector of taxes of the town, commanding him, her to proceed and collect the tax, said tax of the person in estate liable. Therefore, said tax shall be due and payable no later than the 15th day of August 2020, and all taxes remaining unpaid no later than the 15th day of August 2020. Shall carry until it collected a penalty at a rate of 12% per annum unless specifically abated by a vote of the town council under Title 44 of the General Laws of Rhode Island, 1956 as amended. Tax may be paid in 4 installments, first installment of 25% no later than the 15th day of August, and the remaining installments follows 25% on the 15th day of October 2020, the 25th percent of the 15th day of January AD 2021, and the remaining 25% on the 15th day of April 2021. Each installment of taxes. Come on, I'm having enough trouble here. Where am I now? Each installment of taxes if paid on or before the last day of each installment period successively in an order shall be free from any charge for penalty. The first installment or any succeeding installment of taxes is not paid by the last date of the respective installment period or periods as they occur, then the whole tax or remaining unpaid balance of the tax, as the case may be, shall immediately become due and payable and carry until collected a penalty at a rate of 12% per annum from the first quarter due date and at the last installment quarter unless specifically abated by a vote of the town council under Title 44 of the General Laws of Rhode Island, 1956 as amended. Is there any more into that, Cynthia?
You went too far.
Payment options shall not apply to any tax levied in an amount not in excess of $100, in which case such tax shall be payable in a single installment. Is there a motion to approve the method of tax collection as read?
So moved, Mr. President.
Motion by Mrs. Zelinski. Is there a second?
Second.
And by Mrs. O'Hara. She's sitting in the dock again.
She's in the dark near the door, ready to leave.
No, I
Any discussion? On the discussion, I'll turn it back to Gary and I think he can explain, I think, what David was talking about with under his executive orders that he's issued.
Well, we're obligated by charter to set the roll. I think it's within 7 days of this decision. I am going to avail every opportunity with consultation to Solicitor Igliozzi, the opportunity to not do that in that shorter timeline and keep the window open as long as we possibly can to wait for what comes next from the state. It's not that I want to change this budget. I just don't want to, I want to make sure that we don't put ourselves into a circumstance where we have to change it after we've sent out the bills. You follow me? I mean, the ideal circumstance, we set the roll tomorrow, we send out the bills the day after that, and we start seeing the cash flow. If, you know, if this is a normal circumstance, that's what I look for our, the folks that work with Cynthia to make happen, is set the roll, perfect the tax rate, send the bills out. Because of all of the unknowns that we still have, there could be advantage to us to give the council another shot at this in mid-July and into early August. So it isn't the circumstance of being disrespectful of the charter. It isn't the circumstance of trying to usurp anyone's authority. I'm going to do everything I can to make sure that we keep your flexibility as a council available to you as long as possible. If there's anyone who objects to that, and I'd like to hear it, but I'm hoping that I have your support in looking at it this way this year.
Mrs. O'Hara?
Thumbs up.
Oh, I thought you,
No, that's not that's my thumb.
I concur with the administrator, and I actually had a discussion with him last week saying, what would happen if we didn't even set a budget today? Because we only have 2 more hours to go. Even though it says by charter, we'd be in violation of the charter. Okay, we're in violation of the charter. What happens when we're in violation of the charter? Someone needs to file a complaint in Superior Court. Try to get a date in Superior Court right now. By the time it would ever get on the docket in Superior Court, we'd have this resolved, hopefully, in which case the judge would throw it out of court. Was it a risk worth taking, or was it a necessary risk? No, we came to a sensible conclusion, but it was one of those options that we could have pursued had we needed to say, you know what, we're not setting the budget. We're going to set a spending plan for July for the town, and we're going to not do anything with the budget and push it just like the state's doing. But I think how we're working this is gonna, we'll see if it works or not.
It was a responsible way to do it.
Yeah.
What we will be doing is, you know, we have a spending plan right now. So everything that happens tomorrow and going forward in July will be as authorized in this budget. The only detail that's being left open is exactly how we bill. You know, there could be some circumstance in this that the state changes the distribution of the motor vehicles tax application to the point that, you know, we just don't know. I mean, it's going to, and what it gives us the opportunity to do is eliminate the chance that we have to issue bills twice. You know, send out corrected bills, send out credits, or, you know, the other side, the worst case. So we're going to, I'll be working with Solicitor Igliozzi to make sure that we comply with every intent of the charter, the local ordinances, as well as the state law, but also make sure that I keep your flexibility available to you as much as possible until, you know, hopefully we get, clear vision and we know that, okay, this is it. We know what we have from the state. We know our plan works. We're within our contingency. We can fund the school department, and sometime in, August or whenever, we can figure out what to do with the rest of contingency, the rest of that's what my plan is. I hope I have your support in going forward that way.
Any other questions, comments? So we have Mr. Jesus.
Please don't forget about water and sewer.
Oh.
I'm sorry, it's getting late. I just didn't want you to forget.
No, that wasn't going to happen.
Okay.
I don't even have them, to be honest with you, because
Okay, I'll put them up on the screen.
Put them up on the screen because I know
Okay.
they were sent, and I think I left my envelope at the school last night when I left.
Mr. President, do we need to extend the meeting?
Yes, you do. Yes.
Yes, we do. Is that a motion?
Yeah, I'll make that motion.
I'll second.
Motion and second. Motion by Mr. Ogier, second by Mrs. Bonioli to extend the meeting to 10:30. Roll call vote.
Barnamoli?
Yes.
Mrs. O'Hara?
Yes.
Mr. Ogier?
Yes.
Mr. Zelinski?
Yes.
Mr. Vadeney?
Yes. And just a quick question for you, Lillian.
Yes.
Did we vote on that method of taxation?
Nope.
Didn't think so. So we have a motion and a second, though.
Yes, you did.
Vote.
You did the same thing last night in between to extend the meeting too. It's okay.
Well, that's important, because if we took the vote after we extended, before extended, who knows? So, yeah, I think you did right, Mr. President.
So which one are we voting on? We just extended the meeting, right?
Just extended the meeting right now. That's the only thing.
Now on the method of tax.
So now I'm calling a roll call vote on the method of taxation.
Has a motion in a second.
We have a motion and a second.
Yes.
Roll call vote.
Mrs. Barnamoli?
Yes.
Mrs. O'Hara?
Yes.
Mr. Ogier?
Yes.
Mr. Zelinski? Mr. Vadeney?
Yes. Wait a minute, I gotta make this small again. Okay. Cynthia, I can't scroll through this, can I?
No,
I only need to see the bottom line.
the bottom, okay.
I need to see what the total expenditure budget is.
Doing water or sewer first?
Okay.
This is sewer,
Well, this is sewer right now.
and this is the expenditures.
Operation, yes.
I just
Okay.
want to make a note that water and sewer, the rates are staying the same as last year.
Okay.
Data has a question.
So which column am I looking at to make, is it the last column? Right there where your cursor is? Okay.
Just put yellow.
David has his hand up.
Mr. Igliozzi?
Mr. President, I just want to remind you that you're now going back to item number 4 on the agenda.
Okay.
This was under the budget, right?
Okay.
That's a
But it
lot.
has no bearing on it. It has no bearing on the method of tax collection.
That's why still you're going back up to item number 4 on
Okay.
your agenda.
Okay.
Mr. President, I think Mr. Jesus brought up a point when she said that the rates are going to stay the same. Do you mind if I read them off just for the record, and we have it in the record for the rates?
Yep.
Okay, for sewer department, per equivalent dwelling unit, it's $527.99. That's the same as last year. Is that correct, Mr. Jesus?
Am I unmuted? Yes, that's correct.
Okay. And then for water, it's $7.64 per 1,000 gallons, and that remains the same as 2020, correct?
That's correct.
Okay, so we have it in the record. Thank you.
Okay. So at this time, is there a motion to approve sewer total expense in the amount of $2,347,617.87?
So moved.
Motion by Mrs. O'Hara. Is there a second?
Second.
Second by Mrs. Bonioli. And this is an enterprise fund. This is not out of the general fund. Any other discussion? Roll call vote.
Mrs. Barnamoli?
Yes.
Mrs. O'Hara?
Yes.
Mr. Ogier?
Yes.
Mr. Zelinski,
Yes.
Mr. Vadeney.
Yes. Now we need to do the sewer.
And for the record, Mr. President, you are approving pages, the 2-page document of exhibit of Appendix F to your budget.
Yes. Next is sewer total revenues.
Can I just say something?
Go ahead.
It's not a 2-page document if you're doing expenditures and revenues.
I apologize. It's
The other page.
page 2 of 2, right? Page 2 of
I gotta admit, I'm at a disadvantage because I don't have that paperwork because I left.
I don't either.
Am I right, Madam
yesterday.
Clerk? Is it page 2 of 2 that was just approved?
So,
Yeah.
yeah,
Yes.
I apologize.
okay. I just wanted to make sure we were on the same page.
Nope, I apologize.
Okay.
Page 1 of 2 now.
Yes.
So now we're doing the proposed revenue budget for the sewer department fiscal year 2021. Sewer total revenues of $2,347,617.87. Is there a motion to approve?
So moved.
Motion by Mrs. Bottomoli. Is there a second?
Second.
Second by Mrs. O'Hara. Any discussion? Hearing none, roll call vote.
Mrs. Barnamoli,
Yes.
Mrs. O'Hara,
Yes.
Mr. Ogier,
Yes.
Mr. Zelinski. Was that a yes? Sorry.
I'm sorry, yes.
Okay. And Mr. Vadeney.
Yes. Okay, Cynthia, can you put up the water department expenditures? Okay, the water department fiscal year 2021. Water department total expenditures of $686,806.48. Is there a motion to approve?
Motion to approve, Mr. President, but to include that as Appendix E.
Motion by Mrs. Zelinski. Is there a second?
Second.
Second by Mrs. O'Hara. Any discussion? Hearing none, roll call vote.
Mrs. Barnamoli,
Yes.
Mrs. O'Hara,
Yes.
Mr. Ogier,
Yes.
Mr. Zelinski,
Yes.
Mr. Vadeney.
Yes. Next is the Town of North Smithfield Enterprise Fund Revenue Budget Water Department Fiscal Year 2021. Water total revenues, $686,806.48. Is there a motion to approve?
Mr. President, yes, if, I'd also like to include that it's Appendix E, page 1 of 2.
Motion by Mrs. Zelinski. Is there a second?
Second.
Second by Mrs. O'Hara. Any discussion? Hearing none, roll call vote.
Mrs. Barnamoli,
Yes.
Mrs. O'Hara,
Yes.
Mr. Ogier,
Yes.
Michelle is still on. I told her she didn't have to.
We hear you, Cynthia.
Sorry. I'm like,
I was interested in what she was saying. Yes, if you're going to call my name, yes.
Mr. Vadeney.
Yes. Mr. Jesus,
yes.
is there anything else that we need to take care of tonight?
Let me think. No, thank you,
Okay.
President.
Mr. President,
Mr. Igliozzi,
I just want to make sure I'm looking at the Appendix D, the capital budget.
Oh, no.
Has that been approved with the cuts?
That was
yes,
in the capital
yes,
budget.
we did.
Okay, I apologize. You want to make sure?
Capital is part of the operations budget, and we did approve it, and we did note that what was removed in the values of them.
Yes.
Okay. I just wanted to make sure before you close shop.
Yep, nope. Yeah, because I'm not calling them up at 11:30 to tell them we missed something.
No, I won't call you, Mr. President.
All right, you can get rid of this now, Cynthia, if you can.
Mhm.
I can see my people again. There we go.
People.
That's it.
Just need a motion to adjourn, please.
Motion
Okay,
to
sure.
adjourn.
Mr. President?
Well, I was gonna say something before we adjourn anyway, but it's been a long 2 nights. Lot of discussion, civil discussion. Very thankful for that. Didn't get nasty, didn't need to get nasty. Came to a conclusion that we can live with. School department agrees with our conclusion. So for that, I thank everybody. This was,
Thank you, everyone.
That is exactly what I wanted to say too. I mean, I couldn't be more proud of the staff that has worked so hard on this, the budget committee for all of their time, every department that went before the budget committee to encourage this discussion that comes to, I hope, a rational conclusion as we move it through the year. Thank you all so much.
Thank you.
Mr.
Happy
President,
4th.
I think it was very succinct what the administrator O'Gall expressed, but also I'd like to express my gratitude to the residents, the people that came into Zoom and had comments.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah, so just want to acknowledge the residents that helped us with this.
anyone else before we adjourn?
Good night.
Is there a motion
Did
to
we have a
adjourn?
motion? Did we
Is there a
vote?
motion to adjourn?
Motion to adjourn.
Motion by Mrs. O'Hara, second by Mr. Zelinski.
Good night, everybody. Before
night.
Roll call vote.
4th, stay safe.
Wait, I have to roll call vote.
Oh,
Yes.
okay.
Mrs. Barnamoli,
Yes.
Yes, yes.
Mr. Rozier,
Yes.
Mrs. Zelinski,
Yes.
Mr. Vadney.
Yes.
Good night.
Good
Thank
night.
you all.
Good night, everyone. Thank you all.
Good night, all.
Good night.